Chapter 121, The Researcher's Counterattack. Akira wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the hole left in his vibrating thread barrier. Then, he smiled. Interesting. Kaien dusted off his robe after blocking the Dark Knight's lance. So, it noticed. The Dark Knight rested its lance on its shoulder. You too, are the foundation. As long as you remain, the other three can attack without restraint. So, you are my priority. Daichi laughed. Ha ha ha, he finally figured it out. Ren shook his head. It only took him half the battle. Shun smiled faintly. For a level 30 commander. That's actually slow. The Dark Knight wasn't offended. Instead, it laughed as well. You five, really don't fear death. Akira adjusted his glasses. No, we fear wasting time. The Dark Knight tilted its head. Wasting time, Kaien answered calmly. If you attack us, the experiment becomes more interesting. The Dark Knight disappeared again. This time, it ignored Daichi, Ren, and Shun completely. It rushed straight toward Akira. Its speed exceeded everything before. The black lance pierced forward. Akira didn't move. Instead, he raised one finger. Every vibrating chakra thread in the battlefield changed direction. Not toward the Dark Knight. Toward each other. The millions of threads instantly wove themselves into thousands of microscopic meshes. The Dark Knight's lance pierced the first layer. Then the second. Then the third. Every layer reduced its momentum. By the time it reached Akira, the lance had almost stopped. Akira calmly pushed it aside with one hand. The spectators froze. He blocked it. The puppet masters stared in disbelief. He turned chakra threads into armor. At the same moment, Kaien smiled. You forgot something. The Dark Knight frowned. What? Kaien pointed upward. When you rushed toward Akira, you entered the center of my domain. The Dark Knight instinctively looked around. Too late. Every floating ceiling array surrounding it lit up. Unlike before, none of them teleported. Instead, they connected. 100,000. Millions of ceiling formulas merged into a gigantic three-dimensional cube. The Dark Knight found itself trapped inside. The ancient Uzumaki elders stood up simultaneously. Barrier ceiling. Space ceiling. Suppression ceiling. He merged all three. The Dark Knight struck the barrier. Boom. The cube shook. But it didn't break. Kaien smiled. I stopped trying to teleport you. I'll simply move the battlefield around you. Outside the cube, Daichi cracked his knuckles. Can we start now? Ren smiled. I've been waiting. Shun quietly raised his sword. Akira tightened every vibrating thread. The cube itself suddenly began shrinking. Slowly, relentlessly, the Dark Knight swung its lance repeatedly. Each strike shattered one layer. Another immediately replaced it. The spectators watched in complete silence. One young shinobi whispered, "There, building techniques." While fighting, Hashirama smiled. That's because they've never considered battle separate from research. Madara nodded. For them, every opponent is another experiment. Inside the shrinking barrier, the Dark Knight suddenly stopped attacking. Instead, it smiled. Ha 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 ha. So that's your answer. You evolve, even faster than I do. Akira calmly nodded. We always have. The Dark Knight lowered its lance. Excellent. Dark crimson energy suddenly erupted from its armor. The shrinking barrier immediately stopped. Tiny cracks spread across every ceiling layer. Kaien's expression became serious. It's increasing its output again. The Dark Knight slowly looked at the five. No, I've finished adapting. The crimson aura exploded outward. Every seal trembled. Every thread vibrated violently. Even the air itself seemed to tear apart. For the first time, the five researchers became completely serious. Because they realized, the Dark Knight had reached the end of its adaptation. Its true strength was only now beginning to emerge. Chapter 122, The Knight's True Strength. The crimson aura continued to rise. Crack, crack, crack. Kaien's three-dimensional ceiling cube trembled violently. Millions of ceiling formulas lit up simultaneously. Yet, the cracks continued spreading. Kaien narrowed his eyes. It's no longer increasing its chakra. Akira nodded. No, it's increasing its physical existence. The Dark Knight slowly took a step forward. Boom. The first layer of the ceiling cube shattered. Another step. Boom. The second layer collapsed. It wasn't using a technique. It wasn't attacking. Its sheer presence was crushing the seals. The ancient Uzumaki elders became silent. One of them whispered. Impossible. Barrier seals are breaking under pressure alone. The Dark Knight looked toward Kaien. I've been relying on techniques. I've been relying on experience. But, it seems, I underestimated researchers. It slowly raised its lance. So, I'll use my own path. Dark crimson lightning erupted around the lance. Unlike Haki, unlike chakra, it was something completely different. The space around the weapon began to distort. Even Kaion's teleportation seals became unstable. Daichi smiled. There it is. Ren slowly drew his sword. So, that's your strongest state. Shun quietly lowered his center of gravity. Good. The Dark Knight vanished. Not because it teleported. Not because it moved quickly. It simply disappeared from everyone's perception. Even Hagoromo briefly lost sight of it. The next instant, it appeared before Daichi. The black lance descended. Boom. Daichi crossed both arms. His seventh gate. Compact Susanoo. Advanced Armament Haki. Advanced Conqueror's Haki. All activated simultaneously. Even then, he was blasted across the battlefield. His feet carved a trench nearly 2 kilometers long before he stopped. The spectators gasped. It overpowered Daichi. Before anyone could react, the Dark Knight had already reached Ren. Clang. Sword met lance. A shockwave split the sky. Ren's Haki-coated blade bent under the pressure. He twisted his body and redirected the attack instead of blocking it directly. Even so, he was thrown backward. Shun immediately entered. His sword targeted the knight's blind spot. The Dark Knight didn't even turn around. It simply swung its elbow. Boom. Shun's Susanoo armor cracked. He was forced back for the first time in the battle. Hashirama slowly exhaled. So, this is its true strength. Madara smiled. Excellent. The Dark Knight didn't chase them. Instead, it looked toward Akira and Kaion. I told you, I've finished adapting. It thrust its lance. No energy wave. No visible attack. Just a simple thrust. Akira's observation Haki screamed. Dodge. Both supports disappeared instantly. A heartbeat later, the space where they had been standing silently split apart. A black crack extended for dozens of kilometers. Nothing inside that line remained. The ground, the floating seals, the vibrating threads, everything had been erased. Even Hagoromo's expression became serious. A spatial attack. Hamura nodded. It cut space itself. The five regrouped. No one spoke for several seconds. Daichi rolled his shoulders. Blood dripped from his arm. Ren looked at the tiny crack on his sword. Shun silently repaired his grip. Akira rewove millions of destroyed chakra threads. Kaion recreated thousands of broken seals. The Dark Knight watched them quietly. Then, it smiled. Good. Stand up again. I dislike opponents who fall after one strike. Daichi laughed loudly despite his injuries. Ha ha ha, you're becoming more likable. Ren nodded. I agree. Shun smiled. At least now, you're fighting instead of talking. The Dark Knight laughed. So, shall we begin? The final round. The five looked at one another. Then, for the first time in the battle, all five released every ounce of killing intent they had been suppressing. Black lightning erupted across the battlefield. Natural energy shook the heavens. The entire ceiling formation lit up. Even the Dark Knight's smile widened. At last, neither side was testing, neither side was researching, neither side was adapting. The next exchange would be fought with everything they possessed. Chapter 123, the five become serious. Silence. The battlefield seemed to stop breathing. Black lightning danced around the five. Natural energy surged through Kaion and Akira. The seventh gate continued roaring around Daichi, Ren, and Shun. For the first time, the five released their killing intent without restraint. Even the spectators several hundred kilometers away felt suffocated. The Dark Knight smiled. Excellent. So this is your true resolve. Daichi pointed at him. Don't misunderstand. We're not releasing killing intent because we want to kill you. The Dark Knight tilted its head. Oh, Daichi grinned. We're releasing it because we're finally enjoying ourselves. The next instant, the five vanished. Not one, all five. The Dark Knight's pupils contracted. Its instinct screamed. Every direction was dangerous. Boom. Daichi's fist struck first. The Dark Knight blocked with its lance. At that exact instant, Ren's sword descended from above. The knight twisted. Before completing the movement, Shun's blade arrived from behind. The knight forced Shun back with one elbow. Then, Akira's vibrating threads wrapped around its right arm. The knight immediately cut them apart. But, that brief delay was enough. Kaion smiled. Got you. A teleportation seal activated beneath the Dark Knight's feet. This time, it wasn't teleported away. Instead, only its right arm was teleported. The Dark Knight's stance instantly became unstable. Its own body lost balance. The spectators gasped. He teleported. Only one arm. The ancient Uzumaki elders stood frozen. Partial. Space-time teleportation. He can teleport parts of a target. Daichi never wasted the opening. His hockey-covered punch landed directly on the knight's ribs. Crack. For the first time, the black armor shattered completely in one area. Dark blood sprayed into the air. The Dark Knight laughed. Ha ha ha. Excellent. Before anyone expected it, instead of retreating, it grabbed Daichi's arm. Then, take one from me. Its forehead slammed directly into Daichi's face. Boom. Daichi flew backward. Blood scattered through the air. Hashirama blinked. A headbutt. Madara burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. So he finally gave up fighting elegantly. Ren smiled. I like this guy. Shun nodded. He's learning. The Dark Knight disappeared again. This time, not toward the supports, not toward the attackers. It appeared directly between all five. Then, it spun. The black lance became a gigantic circle of destruction. Space itself cracked around it. Akira immediately shouted, "Don't block." For the first time in the battle, the five simultaneously retreated. The spinning lance sliced through the battlefield. Mountains vanished. Kaien's ceiling arrays shattered. Even invisible hockey slashes were destroyed. The attack erased everything in its path. Hamura slowly nodded. He destroyed the battlefield. Hagoromo smiled. He realized that if he couldn't beat their techniques, he should erase the environment that supported them. Kaien calmly looked around. Nearly 70% of his ceiling arrays had vanished. Akira's thread network had been cut apart. Ren's hidden slashes had disappeared. The battlefield had become empty again. The Dark Knight rested the lance on his shoulder. There. Now, we start over. The five looked around. Then, to everyone's surprise, they smiled. Daichi laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. You idiot. The Dark Knight frowned. What? Ren slowly raised his sword. You destroyed the battlefield. Shun calmly continued. But, you forgot one thing. Akira smiled. We're researchers. Kaien finished the sentence. We can build another one. The Dark Knight froze. Then, it laughed louder than ever before. Ha 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 ha. Good. Build it again. I'll destroy it again. Daichi pointed his fist toward the knight. Then, let's see, which side runs out of ideas first. The battlefield shook once more. One side possessed 10,000 years of combat experience. The other possessed 5 minds that never stopped creating. Neither side intended to surrender. And the greatest battle of the dungeon entered its final stage. Chapter 124, The Madman's Plan. The battlefield had been wiped clean. Kaien's ceiling domain had been destroyed. Akira's thread network had been cut apart. Ren's hidden slashes had vanished. The Dark Knight stood calmly. Its lance rested upon its shoulder. So, what will you build next? Daichi slowly stepped forward. A grin spread beneath his wooden mask. We're not building anything. The Dark Knight frowned. No. Daichi stretched his shoulders. This time, I'll become the battlefield. The next instant, he disappeared. The Dark Knight raised its lance, expecting another devastating punch. Instead, Daichi ignored the weapon entirely. He rushed straight into the Dark Knight's chest. Then, wrapped both arms around it, locked its shoulders, locked its waist, locked its arms. The Dark Knight's eyes widened. A grapple. Daichi laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. Got you. No matter how the Dark Knight struggled, Daichi refused to let go. Every muscle in his body was strengthened by the seventh gate, compact Susanoo, and armament haki. His grip was like an iron prison. Akira moved first. Without the slightest hesitation, several black chakra threads shot forward. They pierced through Daichi's body at carefully calculated angles. The spectators gasped. What is he doing? The threads continued through Daichi and wrapped themselves deep around the Dark Knight's armor and joints. Akira clenched his fist. The threads tightened. Now, even if the Dark Knight broke Daichi's grip, Akira's threads would keep them bound together. Before anyone could understand, Ren and Shun arrived. Neither hesitated. Neither slowed down. Their hockey-coated swords thrust forward. Both blades passed through Daichi and into the Dark Knight behind him. The entire battlefield fell silent. Even Hashirama stood frozen. They stabbed their teammate. Kaien was already moving. He reached Daichi in a single step. Instead of attacking, he slammed a massive ceiling array directly onto Daichi's chest. Golden symbols instantly spread throughout Daichi's body. 1 layer, 10 layers, hundreds of protective seals covered his internal organs. Blood loss suppression, organ stabilization, pain regulation, emergency life support seals. The ancient Uzumaki elders stared in disbelief. Those aren't combat seals. They're emergency medical seals. Akira's Sharingan spun rapidly. His chakra threads changed again. Green chakra flowed through them. Medical ninjutsu. Every damaged muscle, every injured blood vessel, every torn tissue, was continuously repaired. Not fast enough to erase the pain, but enough to keep Daichi fighting. Daichi threw back his head and laughed. Ha 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 ha. It hurts. It really hurts. But, I've still got you. His grip tightened even further. The Dark Knight struggled. For the first time, it couldn't move. Ren and Shun looked at one another. Then silently nodded. Their hands remained on their sword hilts. Without pulling the blades free, they began channeling advanced armament haki through the swords. Not onto the surface, into the Dark Knight's body. The internal destruction began. Invisible shockwaves erupted inside the knight's armor. The Dark Knight groaned for the first time. Internal attacks. The spectators were speechless. One Jonin whispered, "There," using their own teammate as the bridge. Daichi laughed even harder. Ha ha ha. Keep going. I can take it. The haki also flowed into Daichi's own body through the swords. Even with Kaien's seals and Akira's constant healing, the pain was unimaginable. Yet, he never loosened his grip. Then, to everyone's horror, Daichi did something even crazier. He released one arm, reached toward Ren's sword, and grabbed the blade with his bare haki-covered hand. Ren's eyes widened. Daichi. Daichi grinned. If we're already this crazy, let's go all the way. He gripped the blade tightly. Then, released his own advanced armament haki and advanced conqueror's haki directly through the sword. 3 streams of haki, Ren's, Shun's, Daichi's, all converged inside the Dark Knight's body. The internal destruction multiplied. The Dark Knight coughed violently. Cracks spread across its armor from the inside out. Even Hagoromo stood in stunned silence. They turned one teammate into the center of a combined attack. Hamura slowly shook his head. I have witnessed countless battles, but never have I seen a team trust one another to this extent. Far away, the husky buried its face in its paws. Idiots. Absolute idiots. It sighed. And somehow, it actually works. The battlefield had gone completely silent. Every shinobi watching understood one thing. The 5 weren't fearless. Daichi wasn't immune to pain. He was enduring it willingly. Because he trusted that Akira's medical threads would keep him alive. That Kaien's seals would protect his vital organs. That Ren and Shun would never make a mistake. And that trust was more terrifying than any technique they possessed. Chapter 125, The Last Lesson. The battlefield had become completely silent. Daichi continued laughing. Blood flowed from his mouth. Both Ren's and Shun's swords still pierced through his body. Akira's medical chakra continuously repaired the damage. Kaien's emergency sealing arrays protected every vital organ. The Dark Knight struggled with all its strength. Yet, it couldn't escape. Inside the Dark Knight's body, 3 streams of advanced armament haki continuously destroyed everything from within. Organs, bones, muscles, armor. Nothing was spared. The cracks spread across its entire body. The Dark Knight looked at Daichi. Doesn't it hurt? Daichi laughed even louder. Ha 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 ha. Of course it hurts. It hurts so much that I can barely think. The Dark Knight became silent. Then, why? Daichi's laughter gradually stopped. He looked directly into the knight's crimson eyes. Because, I trust them. Silence. The entire battlefield heard those words. I trust Akira to keep me alive. I trust Kaien to protect my organs. I trust Ren and Shun not to miss. So, all I have to do is refuse to let go. The Dark Knight stopped struggling. Instead, it quietly looked at the other 4. Akira never stopped healing. His medical chakra flowed without interruption. Every second, thousands of damaged cells were repaired. Kaien continuously adjusted the sealing arrays as Daichi's body suffered new injuries. Every heartbeat, the seals changed. Ren and Shun maintained perfect control over their haki. Not 1 millimeter deeper, not 1 millimeter shallower, enough to devastate the enemy, without killing their own teammate. Hashirama quietly smiled. I understand now. Madara looked toward him. What? Hashirama pointed at the 5. Everyone keeps saying, Daichi is insane. But, he isn't. Madara remained silent. Hashirama continued. He simply has absolute faith that the other 4 will never fail. Even Hagoromo nodded. The strongest technique isn't their haki. It isn't the 8 gates. It isn't their sealing. It's trust. Hamura smiled. And trust cannot be copied. The Dark Knight slowly closed its eyes. It remembered countless battles, countless companions, countless worlds. Then, it smiled. I lost. Everyone froze. The Dark Knight continued. My body can still fight. My strength hasn't reached its limit. But, my team lost long ago. Silence filled the battlefield. The nightmare horse quietly walked toward its master. It lowered its head. The Dark Knight gently stroked its mane. For 10,000 years, it was only the 2 of us. He looked at the 5. You have 5 hearts. Beating is 1. There is no greater strength. The crimson aura surrounding the Dark Knight slowly faded. Its lance disappeared into particles of light. The nightmare horse also began dissolving. Daichi finally released his grip. The Dark Knight stepped backward. Its cracked armor slowly crumbled away. The world chat remained completely silent. Nobody celebrated. Nobody cheered. They had witnessed something greater than victory. The Dark Knight looked toward the 5 one final time. You researchers, continue walking your path. One day, you may surpass even those who created the systems you study. The 5 remained silent. They simply bowed slightly, not out of submission, but respect. Respect for a worthy opponent. The Dark Knight smiled. Then, its body dissolved into countless particles of light. A final system notification echoed across the entire dungeon. Congratulations. Level 30 Elite Commander cleared. First clear completed. Special evaluation. Perfect teamwork achieved. Unique title unlocked. Beyond 5, 1 heart. The battlefield erupted into cheers. Millions of players celebrated. Only the 5 quietly stood together. Daichi pulled Ren's and Shun's swords from his body. Akira sighed. I'll be healing you for hours. Daichi laughed. Worth it. Kaien shook his head. You really are an idiot. Ren smiled. The useful kind. Shun nodded. The irreplaceable kind. The 5 looked at each other. Then burst into laughter. Far away, the husky quietly smiled. The experiment is finally complete. It looked toward the celebrating ninja world. They came to learn how to become stronger. Instead, they learned how to trust. And for the first time, the entire ninja world understood that the strongest technique ever demonstrated in the dungeon had never been a jutsu. It had been 5 people who trusted one another with their lives. Chapter 126, Rewards Beyond Expectations. The battlefield remained silent. The Dark Knight had disappeared. Only countless particles of light drifted through the air. No one moved. No one spoke. The final battle had ended. Then, every player's phone vibrated simultaneously. Dungeon announcement. The first multi-team Monster Horde dungeon has been successfully cleared. Calculating contributions. Golden light descended upon every participant. Every player held their breath. Even Hagoromo and Hamura quietly waited. The system continued. Contribution rankings. First place. Identity hidden. Contribution. Classified. Reward. Classified. The entire world chat exploded. Leaf Jonin 5 people. Cloud Shinobi, their names are hidden. Mist Anbu, even the reward is hidden. Sand Shinobi, who are they? Only 23 Uchiha remained silent. Not one dared type a single word. The rankings continued. Second place, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Third place, Hamura Otsutsuki. Fourth place, Madara Uchiha. Fifth place, Hashirama Senju. Sixth place, Indra Otsutsuki. Seventh place, Asura Otsutsuki. The younger generation stared blankly. Even after watching the battle, seeing those names together still felt unreal. Another notification appeared. Special reward. Perfect teamwork achievement unlocked. Reward available for all participants. The battlefield erupted in cheers. What? Everyone gets a reward. The system explained. Watching and participating in battles between perfect teams has increased your understanding of teamwork. Team synchronization growth speed permanently increased by 30%. Party experience sharing efficiency permanently increased. Cooperative techniques become easier to master. The entire ninja world froze. Hashirama smiled brightly. So, the greatest reward wasn't power. Hagoromo nodded. It was understanding. Another notification followed. New shop items unlocked. Because players have witnessed foreign power systems in battle, the following items are now available for purchase. Observation Hockey Training Manual * Armament Hockey Training Manual * Beginner's Medical Ninjutsu Manual * Beginner's Sealing Theory * Beginner's Chakra Thread Manipulation * Team Synchronization Manual. The world chat exploded again. Leaf Genin Hockey is available. Cloud Jonin, we can actually learn it. Mist Anbu Chakra Threads are in the shop too. Sand Shinobi Team Synchronization Manual. Inside the control room, the 5 had already returned through another portal. Daichi immediately collapsed onto the floor. I'm never doing that again. Akira looked at him. I've heard you say that before. Ren laughed. You'll absolutely do it again. Shun poured himself a cup of tea. Without question. Kaien smiled. Next time, you'll probably come up with something even crazier. Daichi looked at the ceiling. Then grinned. Probably. The husky walked over carrying a thick stack of papers. It dropped them onto the table. Thud. Daichi stared at the mountain of documents. What's this? The husky smiled innocently. Battle reports. damage reports, reward distribution, dungeon reconstruction, shop updates, new achievement registration, contribution calculations, user feedback, and bug reports. Silence. Ren slowly looked away. I suddenly remembered. I have training. Shun stood up. My tea is getting cold. Akira quietly closed his notebook. I should organize the combat data. Daichi pointed at the door. I'm still injured. Within seconds, all 5 disappeared. The husky stood there alone. It looked at the mountain of paperwork, then shouted toward the empty hallway. Come back, you 5. Their laughter echoed from somewhere far away. For the first time in countless years, the ancient dungeon system laughed as well. Idiots. It sat down alone, picked up the first report, then smiled. Working with them is actually fun. Far away, across the entire ninja world, millions of players opened their phones, not to look at rankings, not to admire the legends, but to study, because everyone now understood one truth. The dungeon was never merely a place to fight monsters. It was a place where civilizations exchanged knowledge. And for the 5 masked researchers, that had always been the true purpose from the very beginning. Chapter 127, The Search Begins. Several days passed after the first Monster Horde dungeon. The entire ninja world was still discussing the battle. But for the legendary soul users, there was something even more important. The rewards from the dungeon had been enormous. The top-ranked players had earned an unbelievable amount of gold coins. Enough to purchase something that had once been considered impossible. Resurrection. One after another, the legendary souls entered the shop. The system quietly confirmed their purchases. Resurrection item purchased. Madara Uchiha. Resurrection item purchased. Hashirama Senju. Resurrection item purchased. Tobarama Senju. Resurrection item purchased. Izuna Uchiha. Golden pillars of light descended. Several moments later, 4 living bodies appeared once again. Real flesh, real blood, real chakra, not Edo Tensei, not spiritual bodies. True resurrection. The entire ninja world was shaken once more. Back in Konoha, the village had become livelier than ever. Hashirama stood at the Hokage monument. He smiled warmly. It has been a long time. Tobarama silently observed the rebuilt village. So much has changed. Madara folded his arms. HMPH. It became noisy. Izuna simply laughed. It still feels like home. None of them cared about politics. None of them wanted power. Instead, they all shared the same question. Who were the 5 masked Uchiha? Hashirama looked toward Madara. You seem unusually interested. Madara didn't deny it. Of course, they're Uchiha. They possess eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. They've mastered perfect Susanoo. They use haki. They've learned sealing techniques that even Uzumaki elders admire. They've mastered the 8 gates. They created an entirely new combat style. He looked toward the village. And yet, I've never heard of them. Even Tobarama nodded. I agree. If shinobi like that existed, there should be records, mission files, academy documents, clan archives, something. Izuna smiled. So, we investigate. Madara nodded immediately. Out of curiosity. Hashirama laughed. Just curiosity. Madara looked away. Mostly. The 4 headed directly toward the Uchiha clan archives. The current clan elders welcomed them respectfully. Although shocked by Madara and Izuna's resurrection, they quickly opened every historical record available. Scroll after scroll appeared. Mission logs, clan registers, birth records, training reports, war records, promotion lists, everything. Several hours passed. Nothing. Not one clue. Madara frowned. Impossible. He checked another scroll himself. Again. Nothing. No 5 prodigies. No missing geniuses. No hidden elites. Nothing. Tobarama crossed his arms. I checked the village records. No abnormalities. No deleted files. No sealed archives. No classified shinobi matching them. Hashirama scratched his head. So, they don't officially exist. The room became silent. One elderly Uchiha slowly spoke. There is one strange thing. Everyone looked toward him. The clan census has always balanced. No missing children. No mysterious disappearances. No hidden branches. If those 5 truly belonged to the Uchiha clan, they lived ordinary lives. Madara became even more curious. Ordinary. He couldn't imagine it. 5 monsters like that, living ordinary lives. Impossible. At that moment, outside the archive, 23 Uchiha quietly passed by. The original phone testers. The moment they noticed Madara, their expressions became slightly unnatural. One whispered, "They're investigating." Another nodded, "I expected this." A third lowered his voice. "Don't say anything. Remember, Their warning. Every one of them immediately fell silent. Not one dared reveal the truth. Back inside the archives, Madara slowly closed the final scroll. Then smiled. It wasn't frustration. It was excitement. So, they really exist. They're just better at hiding than I ever was. Izuna laughed. I never thought I'd see the day when you admitted someone was better at hiding. Madara smirked. HMPH. If they're the ones who built the dungeon, they deserve that compliment. Hashirama smiled helplessly. So, what now? Madara stood up. He looked toward the village outside. We wait. They've already appeared once. If they're still in Konoha, we'll meet them eventually. Far away, inside a quiet tea shop, 5 masked wooden masks rested inside a storage seal. Daichi sneezed. Someone's talking about us. Ren laughed. I wonder who. Shun calmly drank his tea. My guess. A certain proud Uchiha. Kaien smiled without looking up from his notes. Let him investigate. Akira closed another research notebook. He won't find anything. The 5 returned to discussing their next project. Completely unaware, or perhaps completely unconcerned, that the 4 greatest legends of Konoha had already begun searching for the mysterious 5 Uchiha who had shaken the entire ninja world. Chapter 128, The Naka Shrine. Several days after returning to life, the 4 legends were still investigating. Hashirama had searched through mission records. Izuna had questioned several Uchiha elders. Madara had personally checked the clan archives. Nothing. The 5 mysterious Uchiha simply did not exist. Inside the Hokage office, Tobirama suddenly placed several documents on the table. I found something. Hashirama looked up. What is it? Tobirama pointed at a list of names. These 23 Uchiha. They're strange. Madara glanced at the papers. Strange how? Tobirama calmly explained. I compared their strength evaluations from before and after the dungeon system appeared. He laid 2 reports side by side. Before the system was publicly released, most of them were ordinary chunin. A few had just become jonin. He flipped to another report. But even before the first official dungeon opened, they had already begun improving. Hashirama frowned. Before, Tobirama nodded. Yes. He pointed toward another set of records. Training logs, mission efficiency, combat reports, all show abnormal growth starting earlier than everyone else. Madara's eyes narrowed. How much earlier? Tobirama answered without hesitation. At least several weeks. Silence filled the room. Hashirama slowly spoke. So, they were already getting stronger. Before anyone else even knew the system existed. Tobirama folded his arms. Exactly. And when the dungeon system officially appeared, their growth didn't just continue. It exploded. Madara's gaze sharpened. They weren't just lucky. They were prepared. Tobirama nodded. Or, they were already playing. Hashirama's expression changed. The first testers. Madara's eyes flashed. The ones who had access before everyone else. Tobirama confirmed. The earliest users. The ones who understood the system before it became public. He tapped the list again. These 23. Madara slowly stood up. So, they're not just suspicious. They're pioneers. Without another word, Madara walked toward the door. Hashirama sighed. He's going. Tobirama nodded. Let's follow. A few minutes later, deep beneath the Uchiha clan, the ancient Naka shrine was unusually lively. 23 Uchiha sat in a circle. Among them, Fugaku Uchiha, the current clan leader, sat quietly at the center. Unlike the rest of the village, they weren't discussing how to adapt to the system. They were discussing how to manage it. Daichi rubbed his forehead. I swear, we've been doing this longer than anyone. And it's still this messy. Ren laughed. That's because we started before everything was stable. Akira adjusted his glasses. We still have over 8,000 reward appeals. Shun calmly drank his tea. Half of them are people asking us to increase drop rates. Kaien sighed. And another 1,000 complaints that hockey is too expensive. Fugaku spoke calmly, his voice steady and authoritative. Maintain balance. If we give in too easily, the system will collapse. One of the others chuckled. They don't even know how easy it used to be. Another added. Back when there were no limits. And no balancing. Everyone laughed. Suddenly. Boom. The stone door exploded inward. Dust filled the shrine. 23 Uchiha instantly stood up. At the entrance, Madara slowly lowered his foot. Behind him stood Hashirama, Tobirama, and Izuna. Silence filled the shrine. Madara's crimson eyes slowly swept across everyone. 23 faces. 23 expressions. Calm. Controlled. Experienced. No one panicked. No one ran. No one spoke. His gaze lingered briefly on Fugaku. The clan leader met his eyes without flinching. Madara calmly walked inside. So, This is where all of you gathered. One young Uchiha forced a smile. Lord Madara, what brings you here? Madara ignored the question. Instead, he looked around the room. Teacups, scrolls, research notes, maps, and something else. Familiar patterns, system terminology, organized data, not the behavior of beginners. Then he spoke. I have a question. No one answered. Madara continued. The 5 masked Uchiha. Who are they? Silence. Absolute silence. Even breathing seemed to stop. Hashirama quietly watched everyone. Not one face changed. Not one heartbeat quickened. Tobirama frowned slightly. They're used to pressure. Madara noticed it too. More than that, they're used to hiding things. Madara's expression suddenly turned cold. You don't need to talk. Before anyone could react, his eyes changed. The Rinnegan opened. A terrifying pressure filled the shrine. In an instant, Madara appeared in front of one of the Uchiha. He grabbed him by the head. The young man couldn't even resist. Madara. Hashirama stepped forward, shocked. But it was too late. Madara's voice was calm. Human path. A chilling force surged. The young Uchiha's eyes widened in horror. His memories, his soul, were being forcibly extracted. Images flashed through Madara's mind. Hidden chambers, ceiling barriers, 5 figures, masks, voices, names, everything. Then, Madara released him. The young Uchiha collapsed to the ground, unconscious but alive. Silence. Absolute silence. Even Fugaku's composure cracked for a moment. Hashirama frowned deeply. Madara. But Madara didn't respond. He stood there, eyes slowly returning to normal. Then, he smiled. A cold, satisfied smile. Found you. The 23 froze. Fear. Real fear. For the first time, their secret had been seen. Madara turned toward the exit. Hashirama followed, still uneasy. Tobirama's eyes were sharp. Izuna remained silent. Before leaving, Madara stopped at the doorway. Without turning around, he said, "Next time, we meet properly." Then he walked away. Only after the 4 legends disappeared did the shrine erupt into chaos. They know. How much did he see? Fugaku clenched his fists. Everything. Deep beneath the shrine, inside the hidden chamber, Daichi's expression darkened. So he used the human path. Ren exhaled slowly. That's bad. Shun remained calm. It was inevitable. Akira adjusted his glasses. We underestimated him. Kaien closed another sealing formula. Then we accelerate. Daichi nodded. Yeah, no more holding back. Above them, the shrine slowly returned to silence. But everything had changed. Outside, Madara walked away from the Naka shrine. A smile on his face. For the first time, the hunt had a direction. And the game had truly begun. Chapter 130, 5 Ordinary Children. The next morning, Madara arrived at the Hokage office carrying dozens of scrolls. He placed them on the meeting table. Thud. Hashirama looked at the mountain of documents. What's all this? Madara calmly took a seat. Everything. Every file. Every mission report. Every academy record. Every medical examination. Every psychological evaluation. Everything related to those 5. Tobirama looked at him. I thought you weren't going to expose them. Madara nodded. I'm not interested in revealing their identities. He looked at the stack of files. I want to understand how my Uchiha clan produced 5 monsters like them. Izuna smiled. So this is simply curiosity. Madara corrected him. No, this is research. If we don't understand their past, we'll never understand how they became what they are today. Hashirama laughed. You really have changed. Madara ignored him. Start reading. Several hours passed. Scroll after scroll was opened. Report after report was examined. The room became quieter and quieter. Because every file said almost exactly the same thing. Daichi. Academy performance. Average. Taijutsu. Slightly above average. Ninjutsu. Average. Genjutsu. Poor. Teacher's evaluation. Energetic but lacks discipline. Asterisk. Hashirama blinked. That's it. Madara silently placed the file aside. Ren. Academy performance. Average. Swordsmanship. Average. Ninjutsu. Average. Teacher's evaluation. Quiet student. Nothing particularly outstanding. Asterisk. Izuna frowned. Impossible. Shun. Written examination. Excellent. Practical examination. Average. Teacher's evaluation. Very intelligent but physically ordinary. Asterisk. Tobirama narrowed his eyes. He hid himself. Even as a child. Akira. Theory. Outstanding. Combat. Average. Teacher's comment. Should consider becoming a researcher instead of a frontline shinobi. Asterisk. Hashirama smiled. Well, that teacher was half right. Kaiin, ceiling talent, average. Ninjutsu, average. Taijutsu, average. Teacher's evaluation, hardworking but unremarkable. Asterisk. Silence. Madara slowly closed the final file. There, all average. Tobirama immediately disagreed. No, he spread the reports across the table. They're consistently average. Hashirama looked confused. What's the difference? Tobirama pointed at the records. Look carefully. None of them ever failed. None of them ever excelled. They never attracted attention. They never competed for first place. They never caused trouble. They never showed unusual talent. He looked toward Madara. That's statistically strange. Madara understood immediately. You're saying, they controlled their performance. Tobirama nodded. Exactly. If one person stays average, it's normal. If 5 people remain perfectly average for years, that's intentional. Izuna looked through another report. Even as children, Tobirama answered calmly. Especially as children, they hid themselves. From the very beginning, Hashirama leaned back in his chair. So, they weren't born monsters. Madara slowly shook his head. No, they were born. Careful. Another silence filled the office. Madara picked up Daichi's academy graduation report. Average. He picked up Ren's. Average. Shun's. Average. Akira's. Average. Kaiin's. Average. Everywhere, the same word appeared. Average. Madara suddenly smiled. I finally understand. The other 3 looked toward him. Madara tapped the reports. These files aren't describing their talent. They're acting. Hashirama blinked. Acting. Madara nodded. They fooled everyone. The academy. The instructors. The clan. The village. For years, they deliberately lived as ordinary people. Tobirama crossed his arms. And when they officially died, no one questioned it, because they were never important enough to investigate. Izuna let out a long sigh. Terrifying. Hashirama nodded slowly. Their greatest disguise was being ordinary. Madara closed the final scroll. No, it was making everyone believe they were ordinary. The room became silent once again. For the first time, the 4 legends realized that the greatest achievement of the 5 was not creating the dungeon system. It was something far simpler. They had lived in Konoha for years, attended the academy, completed missions, graduated as Chunin, and disappeared, without leaving behind a single memory that anyone considered worth remembering. That, more than any jutsu, was their greatest masterpiece. Chapter 131, the day the 5 great nations were humiliated. The investigation continued. Madara wasn't searching for the identities of the 5 anymore. Instead, he wanted to understand how they thought. If we understand their decisions, we'll understand them. Hashirama nodded. So, what do we examine next? Tobirama quietly placed another report on the table. There is one incident. I think it reveals more about their personalities than anything else. The report was titled, The Merchant Association Incident. Hashirama immediately remembered it. Oh, that. Even Izuna laughed bitterly. I don't think there's anyone in the ninja world who doesn't know that story. Several months earlier, the phones had just begun spreading across the ninja world. Their popularity exploded overnight. Naturally, every major village became interested. Not in buying them, but in controlling them. The 5 great villages sent representatives. At first, they negotiated politely. When that failed, the negotiations became threats. The Merchant Association was given the same demand everywhere. Reveal the creators. Hand over the technology. Or, the sentence was never finished. It didn't need to be. Everyone understood. Hashirama sighed. That was a mistake. Tobirama nodded. The greatest mistake. Madara quietly continued reading. The next morning, the entire ninja world woke to horrifying news. The hidden leaf. The hidden cloud. The hidden stone. The hidden mist. The hidden sand. Every village. Exactly the same. Their cage. Hung unconscious before the village's main gate. Black and blue. Covered in bruises. Not a single fatal wound. Not a single broken bone. Just utter humiliation. In Konoha, Danzo hung beside the Hokage. Nearby, every elder, every root commander, every official who had spoken about obtaining the technology by force. All hanging upside down. All unconscious. The other villages were no different. Every person who had proposed seizing the technology, or threatening the Merchant Association, shared the same fate. From cage, to advisors, to elite commanders, no one escaped. The strange part wasn't that they had been defeated. It was, no one remembered how. One cage remembered hearing footsteps. Another only remembered losing consciousness. Some never even saw the attacker. Others insisted There wasn't just one person. No, there were many. Their testimonies contradicted one another completely. Hashirama looked at Madara. Quote. 5 people. Madara nodded. They divided the targets. 1 village each. Tobirama added. And synchronized the attack. They struck all 5 villages. On the same night, without anyone realizing, another report described the aftermath. The moment everyone regained consciousness, every phone in the ninja world received the same notification. We heard the 5 great villages wished to meet us. We have already met enough. Do not interfere with our business again. Otherwise, next time, those hanging at your village gates will personally meet your previous cage in the afterlife. Silence filled the Hokage office. Hashirama slowly rubbed his forehead. They didn't kill anyone. Madara nodded. They didn't need to. Tobirama quietly analyzed the incident. They demonstrated several things. First, they could infiltrate every hidden village. Second, they could defeat every cage-level fighter. Third, they could leave, without being identified. Izuna smiled. And fourth, they had absolute confidence. Madara nodded. Confidence. Izuna laughed. No, arrogance. They walked into the strongest military powers in the world. Beat every important person unconscious. Hung them at their own front gates. Then left a written warning. That's beyond confidence. Hashirama couldn't help laughing. When you put it like that. It really was unbelievable. Madara closed the report. No, it was calculated. Hashirama looked at him. Calculated. Madara nodded. They chose humiliation. Instead of slaughter. They wanted the villages to fear consequences. Not revenge. They protected the merchant association. They protected the technology. And they ensured nobody would dare threaten the distributors again. Tobirama folded his arms. It worked. After that incident, no village ever openly threatened the merchant association again. The room became quiet. Madara looked out the window. Then smiled faintly. The more I investigate them, the stranger they become. They avoid fame. They avoid power. They avoid politics. But, the moment someone threatens their work, they respond, without the slightest hesitation. Hashirama nodded. They don't protect themselves. They protect their research. Outside the Hokage office, the village bustled with ordinary life. No one realized that years after the incident, the 4 greatest legends of the ninja world had reached the same conclusion. The 5 mysterious researchers had never wanted to rule the world. They simply refused to let anyone interfere with the future they were building. Chapter 132, The Price They Were Willing to Pay. The investigation did not stop. If the village records revealed nothing, then there was only one place left. Their old homes. The next morning, Madara, Hashirama, Tobirama, and Izuna quietly entered the abandoned Uchiha district. The 5 houses stood far apart from one another. Years had passed since their deaths. Dust covered the floors. Spider webs hung from the ceilings. The houses looked completely ordinary. Too ordinary. Madara slowly walked through Daichi's house. Nothing. Simple furniture. A small kitchen. A bedroom. Training clothes. Everything looked exactly like the home of an average chunin. Hashirama searched Ren's house. Tobirama examined Akira's. Izuna searched Shun's and Kaion's. Hours passed. Nothing unusual. Tobirama suddenly stopped. He tapped a section of the wooden floor. Quote. Hollow. Madara immediately appeared beside him. The floorboards were removed. Beneath them was a hidden compartment. Inside were dozens of notebooks. The 4 immediately gathered around. Madara opened the first notebook. The title alone made his expression freeze. Mangekyo Sharingan Awakening Method, version 27. Hashirama frowned. Version 27. Madara silently turned the page. His expression gradually changed. Then another page. Another. By the end, even Madara's hands had become still. Hashirama looked over his shoulder. Then, his face turned pale. This is madness. The notebook contained nothing about killing loved ones. Nothing about hatred. Nothing about emotional trauma. Instead, it contained page after page of experiments. Pain tolerance, mental collapse, sensory overload, sleep deprivation, extreme chakra exhaustion, repeated cycles of physical and psychological stress. Each page carefully recorded observations, failures, adjustments, new theories. Every experiment had one goal: force the Sharingan to evolve. Madara quietly whispered, "They were trying to recreate the awakening." Izuna opened another notebook. His expression immediately stiffened. "This one is different." The title read, Mangekyo Awakening Method, version 11. Instead of sleep deprivation, this notebook focused on controlled self-inflicted injuries, precise wounds, healing intervals, chakra fluctuations, mental resilience. Again, every page ended the same way. Result: failure. Hashirama slowly picked up another notebook. Another version, this one focused entirely on genjutsu. Continuous self-inflicted illusions, memory alteration, artificial emotional stimulation. Again, failure. Tobirama opened the final notebook. The room became silent. Every page was covered with equations. Chakra pathways, brain activity, hormonal changes, stress responses. It looked less like ninja research, and more like medical science. At the bottom, one sentence had been underlined. If the Sharingan evolves under extreme emotional pressure, then emotion itself should be reproducible through other methods. No one spoke. The room felt cold. Madara slowly looked around. There are 5 notebooks. Izuna nodded. And every one uses a completely different approach. Hashirama's voice was quiet. They weren't trying to copy each other. They each researched their own method. Tobirama closed the last notebook. They weren't searching for power. They were searching for a repeatable process. Madara slowly nodded. Research. Again, Hashirama suddenly noticed another sentence written in the margin of one notebook. Never experiment on another person. If someone must suffer, it will be ourselves. The room became completely silent. Izuna slowly sat down. They used themselves as test subjects. Madara closed his eyes. Every experiment, every injury, every failed attempt, they had endured it themselves. Not prisoners, not enemies, not teammates, only themselves. Tobirama quietly spoke. No wonder, they hid their strength. If the clan had found these, they would have been branded insane. Madara looked at the 5 notebooks once more. Then quietly said, I was wrong. The others looked toward him. I thought they awakened the eternal Mangekyo because they were talented. He gently placed his hand on the notebooks. They earned it, through methods no sane person would even consider. Hashirama let out a long sigh. They truly are 5 lunatics. Madara nodded. For the first time, he completely agreed. They're not monsters because they were born gifted. They became monsters because they were willing to become their own experiments. The abandoned house fell silent once more. Outside, the wind gently blew through the empty Uchiha district. No one remained there to remember the 5 ordinary chunin who had once lived in those homes. Only their notebooks remained, silent proof of the terrifying path they had chosen long before the world ever learned their names. Chapter 133, They were born different. The room remained silent. 5 notebooks, 5 different Mangekyo awakening methods. 5 children, who had willingly experimented on themselves. Hashirama let out a long sigh. I hope this is the worst thing we'll find. Tobirama didn't answer. He had already noticed something else. He flipped to the first page of one notebook. Then the second. Then another notebook. His expression gradually changed. Madara, look at the dates. Madara frowned. The dates. He looked carefully. Then, his pupils contracted. The first notebook began with a simple sentence. Research log no. 1. Age. 7. The second notebook. Age. 8. The third. Age. 7. The fourth. Age. 8. The fifth. Age. 7. Silence. Absolute silence. Hashirama slowly whispered. They started researching. At 7 years old, Izuna checked every notebook himself. Every date matched. Every notebook had begun when its owner was only 7 or 8 years old. Not teenagers. Not chunin. Children. Madara slowly closed one notebook. They weren't copying anyone. They created these theories. As children, even Tobirama looked disturbed. At 7, I was still learning how to improve water release. Hashirama laughed bitterly. And I was climbing trees. Madara stood up. Find everyone connected to them. If children begin thinking like this, someone influenced them. The investigation immediately expanded. The village archives were opened again. Family records, academy reports, medical files, mission assignments, psychological evaluations, everything. Hours passed. Then, days. Finally, the reports returned. Tobirama read them one after another. No father, no mother, no relatives. All 5 were orphans. Hashirama frowned. No surviving family. Tobirama shook his head. None. Izuna continued reading. No private teachers. No famous mentors. No clan elders taking special interest. No hidden instructors. Madara frowned. So, they taught themselves. Another report arrived. Friendship evaluations. Hashirama quietly opened it, then slowly placed it back on the table. They had almost no friends. Daichi, no close relationships. Ren, no close relationships. Shun, almost always alone. Akira, spent most of his free time reading. Kaien, frequently observed studying sealing scrolls by himself. Izuna sighed. Not even one. Tobirama shook his head. They barely interacted with anyone. Hashirama opened another report. Relationship records. Empty. No girlfriends. No romantic partners. Nothing. Madara quietly laughed. They didn't even have time. Tobirama suddenly found another report. Here's something. He spread several mission records across the table. Their first joint mission. Everyone leaned forward. Mission date. Age. 10. Hashirama blinked. They only became teammates. At 10. Tobirama nodded. Before that, they had almost no interaction. Madara's eyes slowly widened. Which means, they didn't influence one another. Izuna finished the sentence. Silence. The realization was terrifying. Hashirama slowly whispered. So, Daichi wasn't hiding because of Ren. Ren wasn't hiding because of Shun. None of them learned this from each other. Madara nodded. They had already decided to hide their talents before they ever became friends. Tobirama quietly continued. They all independently lived as average children. They all independently began researching impossible techniques. They all independently chose to hide. And only afterward, they met on the battlefield. Hashirama stared blankly. What are the chances that 5 children like that would find each other? No one answered. Madara slowly looked toward the 5 notebooks. His voice had become unusually quiet. I thought they became monsters together. He shook his head. I was wrong. They were already monsters before they met. Izuna couldn't help laughing. So the battlefield didn't create them. It merely introduced them to each other. Hashirama smiled helplessly. I almost feel sorry for everyone else. Madara nodded. Imagine it. 5 children, each secretly believing they were the only strange one. Then one battlefield brought all 5 together. Tobirama closed the final report. And from that day onward, they stopped walking alone. The room became silent once more. Outside, the village continued its peaceful routine. No one knew that decades earlier, 5 lonely orphaned children, each carrying impossible dreams and terrifying ideas, had unknowingly found the only 4 people in the world capable of understanding them. And from that chance meeting, the future of the ninja world had quietly begun to change. Chapter 134, The First Conversation. The Hokage office remained silent. No one spoke for several minutes. The investigation had revealed something none of them expected. 5 orphaned children, no family, no teachers, no close friends. Each had independently begun researching impossible ideas at the age of 7 or 8. Each had hidden their true abilities long before meeting the others. Hashirama finally broke the silence. I don't think they were hiding from other people. Madara looked toward him. What do you mean? Hashirama smiled bitterly. I think they simply didn't know how to live like normal children. No one replied, because it made sense. Izuna quietly looked through another academy report. There is one interesting detail. He handed the report to Madara. It describes their first team mission. Madara immediately began reading. Mission classification, D rank. Participants, Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, Kaien. Mission, escort a merchant caravan. The mission itself was completely ordinary. What caught Madara's attention was the instructor's comment. These 5 children barely spoke to one another during the first half of the mission. Hashirama blinked. They weren't friends. Madara continued reading. After making camp for the night, the 5 unexpectedly remained awake until dawn, discussing strange theories instead of sleeping. The conversation included topics such as chakra circulation, sealing formulas, medical regeneration, sword trajectories, and whether bloodline limits could be artificially reproduced. The instructor understood almost none of the discussion. Silence. Hashirama slowly laughed. So, the first thing they talked about was research. Izuna nodded. Not favorite food, not hobbies, not childhood. Research. Tobirama looked thoughtful. I think that was the moment. Hashirama looked at him. What moment? The moment they realized they weren't alone. The room became quiet again. Madara slowly imagined the scene. 5 10-year-old children, each believing they were strange, each hiding impossible thoughts from everyone around them. Then, during one ordinary mission, one child casually asked, "What do you think would happen if chakra pathways could repair themselves automatically?" Instead of laughing, another answered seriously, "I've actually been thinking about that." A third added another theory. A fourth improved it. A fifth found a flaw. And the discussion continued until sunrise. Madara quietly smiled. They finally found people who understood them. Hashirama nodded. That explains everything. They became inseparable. Not because they were assigned to the same team, but because they finally found people who thought like they did. Tobirama folded his arms. Most friendships begin because people share experiences. Theirs began because they shared curiosity. Izuna laughed softly. No wonder they trust each other so much. They've probably been criticizing each other's ideas since they were 10. Madara picked up another mission report. From that day onward, every mission assignment requested the same thing. Recommended team: Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, Kaien. The comments were nearly identical. Excellent teamwork, outstanding coordination, frequently discuss theories unrelated to the mission, complete objectives efficiently despite appearing distracted. Hashirama couldn't help smiling. So, they weren't becoming stronger during missions. They were holding research meetings. Tobirama nodded. Every mission, every campfire, every journey. They weren't simply traveling, they were exchanging ideas. Madara slowly closed the final report. I understand now. The battlefield introduced them, but the conversations created the 5 researchers. Far away, inside an ordinary tea shop, Daichi burst into laughter. So, what if someone could combine sealing arrays with teleportation? Kaien immediately replied, it would require a stable spatial anchor. Akira adjusted his glasses. Unless the anchor itself becomes mobile. Ren rested his sword against the wall. Then we could fight while moving. Shun calmly took a sip of tea. I'll write it down. The 5 continued discussing impossible ideas. Exactly as they had done since they were 10 years old. Outside, people passed by without a second glance. No one realized that the 5 ordinary young men drinking tea by the window had once spent an entire night talking until sunrise. And that one conversation had quietly changed the future of the ninja world forever. Chapter 135, Where did they train? The Hokage office fell silent once again. The 4 legends had uncovered more than they had ever expected. 5 orphaned children, no teachers, no families, no famous mentors, only endless research notes, and impossible dreams. Then, Tobirama spoke. There is still one contradiction. Hashirama looked toward his younger brother. What is it? Tobirama spread several reports across the table. They researched hundreds of techniques. They experimented on Mangekyo awakening. They created entirely new sealing methods. They developed swordsmanship. They trained the 8 gates. They even created applications for the dungeon system. He looked at Madara. So, where? Hashirama blinked. Where? Tobirama nodded. Research requires facilities. Experiments require space. Training requires land. They couldn't have done all of that inside ordinary houses. Madara immediately understood. A laboratory. Izuna nodded. And a training ground. The 4 began searching once more. This time, not through personal records, but through village maps, property ownership, underground tunnel blueprints, old construction permits, abandoned buildings, training ground reservations, everything. 3 days passed. Nothing. Not a single hidden laboratory. Not a single secret training ground. No abandoned warehouse. No underground bunker. Nothing. Hashirama scratched his head. This doesn't make sense. They had to train somewhere. Tobirama quietly shook his head. No, they had to train. Without anyone noticing, Madara suddenly stood. Check mission records. Hashirama looked confused. What for? Madara smiled faintly. If they never requested training grounds, then perhaps they borrowed the entire world. Hours later, dozens of mission reports were piled onto the table. Escort missions, patrol missions, border surveillance, resource collection, courier missions. Nothing unusual. Until Tobirama noticed a pattern. They volunteered. Hashirama looked over. For what? D-rank missions, C-rank missions, long-distance escorts, supply transportation. They constantly chose missions that kept them away from the village. Madara's eyes narrowed. Time. Tobirama nodded. They weren't interested in the mission rewards. They wanted time outside Konoha. Izuna spread out a large map. Every mission location was marked. Then, he connected the dots. The room became silent. Every route passed through dense forests, empty valleys, abandoned mountains, places where no one lived, places where almost no shinobi traveled. Hashirama slowly whispered. They used the wilderness. Madara nodded. No laboratory. The forests became their laboratory. No official training ground. The mountains became their training ground. Tobirama wasn't convinced. No, that's enough for physical training. But not. He tapped the Mangekyo notebooks. The room fell silent again. He was right. Research on this scale couldn't be hidden in the open. Just then, Izuna found one final report. An old Anbu observation log. It had been dismissed years ago. He began reading aloud. Observation. Team 7 frequently disappears from assigned patrol routes for several hours. Upon investigation, they are always found back on schedule. No evidence of enemy contact. Believed to be resting during missions. Recommendation. No further investigation required. The room became completely quiet. Hashirama slowly smiled. Quote. Resting. Madara laughed. Ha ha ha. They fooled the Anbu too. Tobarama tapped the report. They weren't resting. They were conducting experiments. Then, they cleaned up every trace. And returned before anyone noticed. Madara folded the report. They never needed one permanent laboratory. They created hundreds of temporary ones. Hashirama nodded. Research here today. Destroy everything. Research somewhere else tomorrow. No evidence. No witnesses. Tobarama smiled for the first time during the investigation. I have to admit, their operational security is almost perfect. Madara corrected him. Not almost. Perfect. He looked out the window toward the distant forest surrounding Konoha. Somewhere out there, those mountains, those rivers, those caves, they were all their laboratories. And when they finished, they erased every trace. Far away, deep within a forgotten valley hidden behind dozens of ceiling barriers, an enormous underground research facility silently rested beneath the earth. Rows of laboratories, training halls, medical chambers, ceiling research rooms, sword testing arenas, ancient prototypes, thousands of notebooks, countless failed experiments. It had never appeared on a single Konoha map, never been detected by the Anbu, never been discovered by the Uchiha clan, never been entered by anyone except 5 people. Inside, Daichi sneezed. Ren looked up. Quote. Someone's thinking about us again. Akira smiled. They're probably still trying to figure out where we train. Kaien glanced around the massive underground facility. They'll never find this place. Shun calmly turned another page in his research notebook. Unless we decide to show them. The 5 returned to their work. Above them, the forests of Konoha remained as peaceful as ever. No one knew that beneath their feet lay the birthplace of the greatest research civilization the ninja world had ever seen. Chapter 136, The Missing Training Ground. The 4 legends sat in silence. The investigation had reached another dead end. Madara had concluded that the 5 used forests and mountains as temporary laboratories. It explained their experiments. It explained why no evidence remained. But Izuna suddenly frowned. No. The other 3 looked toward him. Madara asked, "What is it?" Izuna folded his arms. That only explains the experiments. The forests, the mountains, the temporary laboratories. He shook his head. It doesn't explain something much more important. Hashirama became curious. What? Izuna looked at the stack of reports. Their daily training. Silence filled the room. Izuna continued. We've already confirmed something. This 5 were unbelievably strict with themselves. They didn't become this strong by training once every few days. They must have trained every single day. Tobarama slowly nodded. He's right. Daily sword practice. Daily chakra control. Daily physical conditioning. Daily ceiling research. Daily medical practice. He looked toward Madara. They couldn't travel to remote mountains every day. Hashirama smiled bitterly. Especially when they were still academy students. They had classes. They had missions. They had village duties. Madara became thoughtful. So, they needed somewhere close. A permanent training ground. Izuna nodded. And don't forget. He looked directly at Madara. One of them is Kaien, the man whose sealing techniques even the combined knowledge of the Uzumaki clan couldn't fully understand. If today's Kaien wanted to hide a training ground, no one could find it. He smiled slightly. But, even as a child, he was already a sealing genius. So hiding a small training ground wouldn't have been difficult. The room became quiet. Everyone knew Izuna was right. Tobarama slowly stood. I made a mistake. Hashirama looked up. Mistake. Tobarama nodded. We searched their houses. For documents. For laboratories. For evidence. He looked toward the abandoned Uchiha district. But we never searched them. As seal masters. Madara's eyes narrowed. Quote. You think. Tobarama nodded. We should investigate their houses again. This time, assuming everything we see is an illusion. Hashirama laughed. That's exactly how those 5 think. If you search for scrolls, they hide the room. If you search for rooms, they hide the entrance. If you search for entrances, they hide the entire building. Madara slowly smiled. The more I investigate them, the more troublesome they become. An hour later, the 4 returned to the abandoned Uchiha district. The houses looked exactly the same as before. Dust, broken furniture, empty shelves. Nothing unusual. This time, Tobarama didn't search the rooms. He closed his eyes. His chakra slowly spread through the house. He ignored the furniture, ignored the walls, ignored the floor. Instead, he searched for disturbances in chakra flow. Tiny inconsistencies. Places where natural energy behaved differently. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. Found it. Madara appeared beside him instantly. Where? Tobirama pointed toward a completely ordinary wall. The wall isn't the problem. The space behind it is too quiet. Hashirama frowned. What does that mean? Tobirama calmly explained. Every building breathes. Air moves. Temperature changes. Chakra disperses. But, he placed his hand against the wall. Behind this section, nothing changes. It's completely isolated. Izuna smiled. A ceiling barrier. Madara activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The world instantly changed. Layers upon layers of nearly invisible sealing formulas appeared. They weren't drawn on the wall. They were woven into the wood itself. Thousands. No. Tens of thousands of microscopic seals. Each hiding the next. Each protecting another. Madara remained silent for a long time. Finally, he laughed softly. Ha ha ha. So, even their childhood home was already a masterpiece. Tobirama slowly traced one of the sealing lines with his finger. It isn't just hiding something. It's actively convincing observers that nothing is there. Hashirama sighed helplessly. They really never trusted appearances. Madara nodded. No, they trusted only preparation. He stepped toward the sealed wall. If our theory is correct, then behind this is where 5 ordinary children became 5 extraordinary researchers. The 4 exchanged glances. For the first time since beginning their investigation, they felt they were finally standing before the true entrance to the 5's forgotten past. Chapter 137, The Hidden Door. The 4 stood before the ordinary wooden wall. None of them moved. The countless microscopic sealing formulas woven into the wood shimmered faintly under Madara's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Hashirama let out a long breath. So, they really hid something. Madara nodded. They expected someone to search the house. But they never expected someone to see the seals themselves. Tobirama slowly stepped forward. He carefully observed every seal. Several minutes passed. Finally, he smiled. I understand. Hashirama looked surprised. Already? Tobirama nodded. No wonder no one found it. This isn't a lock. Madara frowned. What do you mean? Tobirama traced one tiny seal with his finger. If you forcefully destroy the barrier, the space behind it will collapse. If you remove the wrong seal, the entire formation resets. If you inject chakra, it strengthens itself. Hashirama blinked. So, how do we open it? Tobirama smiled. You don't. You convince it that you're supposed to enter. Madara activated his Sharingan again. This isn't one sealing array. It's thousands. Tobirama nodded. They're layered. Each layer verifies the previous one. An outsider isn't opening a door. He's trying to pass 1,000 examinations. Izuna laughed helplessly. As children, they made something like this. Madara slowly answered. No, they improved it. Again, and again, and again, until it became this. Tobirama suddenly noticed something. The seals were arranged strangely. Not randomly. Not by complexity. But by size. The deeper the layer, the smaller the sealing formulas became. The final layers were nearly invisible. He whispered. They're compressing information. Madara nodded. They're thinking like researchers. Several hours passed. The 4 carefully analyzed every layer. Finally, Tobirama pressed his palm against 7 seemingly unrelated points on the wall. One after another. No chakra. Only pressure. Click. Nothing happened. Then, the entire wall silently disappeared. Not shattered. Not opened. It simply became transparent. Behind it was a staircase descending deep underground. The 4 stared silently. Hashirama smiled. We found it. Madara stepped onto the first stair. The moment his foot touched it, a calm voice echoed throughout the underground passage. It wasn't alive. It was a recorded message. If you're hearing this, then congratulations. You solved the first puzzle. The 4 immediately recognized the voice. Shun. The recording continued. If you reached this place by force, you're already dead. If you reached it normally, you're either one of us, or someone worthy of entering. Hashirama laughed. They left a greeting. Another voice replaced Shun's. Daichi. If you're an enemy, turn around. You'll live longer. Ren's voice followed. If you're a thief, don't waste your time. Everything valuable has already been moved. Akira spoke next. If you're a researcher, welcome. I hope you'll learn something. Finally, Kaien's calm voice echoed through the passage. One final warning. Every room below contains dangerous experiments. Some failed. Some succeeded. Some should never be repeated. If you value your life, do not touch anything unless you understand it. The recording ended. Silence returned. The 4 legends looked at one another. Hashirama smiled. They really expected someone to find this one day. Madara slowly nodded. No, they expected someone worthy. The staircase seemed endless. Every step carried them deeper underground. The air became cooler. The walls gradually changed. Ordinary stone became smooth black rock covered with sealing formulas. Hundreds of glowing symbols stretched into the darkness. Finally, they reached the bottom. Before them stood an enormous steel door. Above it, 5 simple words had been carved into the stone. Knowledge demands a price. No one spoke. Even Madara remained silent, because for the first time, the 4 legends realized they were no longer investigating the past of 5 ordinary Uchiha. They were about to enter the birthplace of 5 men who had changed the future of the ninja world. Chapter 138, The First Laboratory. The 4 legends stood before the enormous steel door. 5 words were engraved across its surface. Knowledge demands a price. Silence filled the underground corridor. Madara slowly pushed the door. It didn't move. Tobirama immediately noticed another sealing array hidden around the frame. Another lock. Hashirama sighed. They really loved making doors. Izuna laughed. I think they trusted seals more than people. Unlike the previous barrier, this one wasn't meant to stop intruders. Instead, it verified one thing: hostility. The moment Tobirama withdrew his chakra and everyone calmed their minds. The seal glowed softly. Click. The giant steel door slowly opened. The 4 stepped inside. Then, they froze. The room before them was enormous. It was nearly the size of a small training ground. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of scrolls. Hundreds of books. Glass containers filled with strange plants. Medical equipment. Rows of sealing tools. Sword racks. Even incomplete mechanical devices lay scattered across long wooden tables. The room wasn't messy. It was alive. It looked as though its owners had left only yesterday. Hashirama slowly looked around. This isn't a hideout. Madara nodded. It's a research institute. Tobirama walked toward a blackboard. It was covered with equations. Not mathematical ones. Chakra circulation, natural energy flow, cell regeneration, seal structures. Every empty space contained notes. Some sentences were crossed out. Others had comments written beside them. One corner of the board read, Hypothesis No. 318. Every bloodline limit is merely a stable arrangement of chakra. Below it, another handwriting had added, Wrong. Chakra alone cannot explain evolution. A third person had replied beneath it. Add spiritual energy into the equation. Then another note. Still incomplete. Continue testing. Hashirama smiled. They argued. On the blackboard, Madara looked closely. There are 5 different handwritings. Izuna laughed. So whenever someone disagreed, they just wrote under it. Akira's handwriting suddenly appeared again. Never erase failed theories. They prevent future mistakes. Tobirama slowly nodded. A proper research habit. Madara moved toward another table. On it lay dozens of swords. Wooden swords. Steel swords. Broken swords. Some were cut cleanly in half. Each carried a small tag. Prototype 1. Prototype 8. Failed. Too heavy. Poor chakra conductivity. Test again. Madara gently picked up one blade. Every failure was preserved. Across the room, Hashirama discovered something else. 5 training logs. Each had exactly the same format. Daily training. Sword practice. 20,000 swings. Completed. Physical training. Completed. Chakra control. Completed. Theory study. Completed. Research. Completed. Meditation. Completed. Every day. Every page. For years. Not a single missing day. Hashirama slowly closed the notebook. No wonder. Tobirama walked toward another wall. It contained hundreds of mission maps. Every mission route had tiny notes beside it. Good cave for experiments. Natural waterfall useful for chakra control. Avoid this valley. Too many patrols. Excellent place for explosive testing. Madara smiled. So the forests really were temporary laboratories. Then, Izuna stopped before a small wooden sign hanging above another doorway. He quietly read it aloud. Failure Archive. Hashirama blinked. Failure Archive. Madara looked toward the door. They archived their failures. Tobirama nodded. They never threw them away. Hashirama slowly smiled. I think this room explains everything. The others looked toward him. He gestured around the laboratory. They didn't become monsters because they never failed. He pointed toward the shelves filled with broken prototypes. They became monsters because they never wasted a failure. Madara nodded slowly. For every successful technique, there were probably 1,000 failures. The 4 quietly continued walking through the laboratory. Every notebook, every broken weapon, every failed seal, every abandoned theory, all silently told the same story. The 5 mysterious Uchiha had never relied on talent. They had relied on something much simpler. The willingness to fail thousands of times, until failure itself became another source of knowledge. At the end of the room, another massive steel door waited. Unlike the first one, only 3 words were carved into its surface. Authorized researchers only. The 4 exchanged silent glances. They all understood. Everything they had seen so far was only the outer laboratory. The real secrets still lay deeper underground. Chapter 140, Conclusions without evidence. The second laboratory was unlike anything the 4 legends had imagined. It contained no complete research, no detailed experiment logs, no step-by-step instructions. Only conclusions. Madara frowned. Where is the data? Hashirama searched another shelf. Nothing. Only thin notebooks. Every notebook contained the same format. Research topic. Final conclusion. Nothing else. No calculations. No experimental procedures. No formulas. No diagrams. Only the final answer. Tobirama smiled faintly. They destroyed the process. Izuna looked puzzled. Why? Tobirama closed one notebook, so no one could repeat dangerous experiments. Hashirama picked up another notebook. Its title immediately caught his attention. Would release. Hashirama quickly opened it. Only one page had writing. Final conclusion. Would release is not an invincible bloodline. The basic principle is surprisingly simple. Combine Earth Attribute Chakra and Water Attribute Chakra to create the initial seed. Then continuously nourish that seed using Yang Release until stable life is formed. Without Yang Release, the seed collapses before becoming wood. Wood Release itself is actually a mediocre bloodline. Its reputation comes almost entirely from Hashirama Senju himself. Hashirama possessed monstrous chakra reserves, extraordinary Yang Release, Sage Mode, and unmatched vitality. Those qualities made Wood Release terrifying. The bloodline alone is far less impressive. Silence. Hashirama stared at the page for a long time. Then, he laughed. Ha ha ha. Madara looked at him. You're laughing. Hashirama nodded. They're right. The others looked surprised. Hashirama smiled. My wood release was never powerful because of the trees. It was powerful because I was. Even Tobirama slowly nodded. I've always suspected something similar. Madara reached for another notebook. Its title made his eyes narrow. Uchiha Stone Tablet. He immediately opened it. Only another single page. Final conclusion. Interesting phenomenon. The requirement to possess increasingly powerful eyes in order to read additional content is genuine. However, the mechanism is nothing more than a sophisticated combination of yin release, yang release, and layered sealing techniques. The stone tablet has been altered. Careful observation reveals 2 different carving depths, 2 different engraving styles, 2 separate authors. Someone modified the original contents long after it was first created. Only a fool would believe the infinite Tsukuyomi described there without questioning its source. The room fell silent. Madara slowly reread the page. Again, then again, his eternal Mangekyo activated instinctively. He remembered the stone tablet. The different depths, the tiny irregularities, things he had never questioned. His expression darkened. Tampered with. Hashirama looked toward him. Do you think? Madara slowly nodded. They may be right. Tobirama quietly added. They didn't claim who altered it. They simply recorded what they observed. Izuna looked at another shelf. Every notebook followed the same pattern. Flying Thunder God Technique. Excellent concept. Excessive chakra consumption. Coordinate calculation inefficient. Possible improvements recorded elsewhere. 8 gates. The gates are limiters, not sources of power. The greatest weakness is not opening them. The greatest weakness is surviving afterward. Medical regeneration alone is insufficient. Medical ninjutsu. Most current techniques repair damage. Very few prevent damage before it occurs. Prevention should be prioritized over treatment. Chakra threads. Extremely underestimated. Precision depends entirely on the user's control. Upper theoretical limit remains unknown. Madara picked up another notebook. Its title made Tobirama raise an eyebrow. Reaper Death Seal. Madara opened it. Again, only one page. Final conclusion. A sealing technique that summons the so-called death god by offering a soul as sacrifice. The summoned entity binds both the caster and the target, sealing them together. The creator of this technique clearly had little regard for their own life. The sacrifice is not inherently required to be the caster. Any suitable soul can fulfill the condition, though this has been deliberately obscured. The ritual itself is inefficient and unnecessarily costly. Alternative sealing methods could achieve similar results without total self-destruction. Tobirama's eyes narrowed. Not necessarily the caster. Madara closed the notebook slowly. So even this was misunderstood. Hashirama frowned. A technique that demands death was never meant to be used that way. Tobirama remained silent for a moment, then spoke quietly. Or perhaps, it was designed to ensure no one would question it. Hashirama slowly looked around. Every conclusion changes how we think. Madara nodded. They questioned everything. Tobirama quietly smiled. I understand now. Hashirama looked at him. What? They never accepted anything, simply because history said it was true. He looked toward the notebook about the stone tablet. They questioned even the sacred foundations of their own clan. Madara remained silent. He had based much of his life on the stone tablet. Now, a single page had planted doubt in his mind. Not through emotion, not through persuasion, but through observation. Hashirama gently closed the wood-release notebook. They didn't write, "This is the truth." He pointed to the first line. They wrote, "Final conclusion." Tobirama nodded. And that wording matters, because a conclusion can change if new evidence appears. The four stood quietly in the room. No complete experiments, no dangerous formulas, only carefully written conclusions, enough to challenge everything they believed, but not enough to copy what the five had achieved. Madara smiled faintly. They protected their discoveries without hiding their thinking. Tobirama nodded. A true researcher doesn't merely hand someone answers. He teaches them how to ask better questions. The four continued deeper into the laboratory. With every notebook they opened, another certainty they had held for decades began to crumble. Chapter 141, The Missing Scrolls. The four legends continued walking through the laboratory. Every notebook they opened contained only conclusions, not a single complete experiment, not a single full technique, not one original scroll. Tobirama suddenly stopped. Wait. The other three turned toward him. What is it? Hashirama asked. Tobirama frowned. Something doesn't make sense. He looked around the laboratory. They experimented on hundreds of techniques. Wood release, Flying Thunder God, Reaper Death Seal, 8 Gates, Medical Ninjutsu, even the Uchiha stone tablet. He folded his arms. But where did they obtain the original techniques? Silence. Madara immediately understood. They never revealed themselves. They never became Hokage. They never entered the village's forbidden archives. So, where did they get Konoha's forbidden techniques? Hashirama slowly nodded. He has a point. Every experiment requires the original. You can't study something without first obtaining it. The four immediately searched the laboratory again. This time, they weren't looking for conclusions. They were looking for scrolls. The original forbidden techniques. Hours passed. Shelf after shelf. Room after room. Nothing. Not a single forbidden scroll. Not even a copy. Izuna frowned. So they returned everything. Tobirama shook his head. No, they never kept them. They only recorded their conclusions. Madara opened another notebook. Its title immediately caught everyone's attention. Cursed Tongue Eradication Seal. Tobirama's expression became serious. Danzo's Seal. Madara opened it. As expected, only one page. Final conclusion. Primary user, Danzo Shimura's root organization. Purpose, prevent information leakage. If a root member attempts to reveal classified information regarding Danzo or root, the seal immediately paralyzes the body and suppresses speech. If an external force attempts to search the victim's memories, the seal induces unbearable pain and can kill the bearer before information is extracted. Hashirama nodded. A ruthless design. Madara continued reading. Then, his expression became strange. Initial observation. We originally believed Danzo to be both ruthless and brilliant. Final conclusion. We were wrong. Danzo is the biggest fool involved in this design. Hashirama blinked. They actually wrote that. Izuna laughed. Sounds like Daichi. Madara continued. The seal possesses no mechanism to verify the origin of incoming signals. Deploy a secondary seal over the original Cursed Tongue Eradication Seal. The secondary seal continuously transmits a false, everything is normal, signal to the original seal. Result. The original seal never activates. The bearer can freely speak. Memory extraction becomes possible. Root secrets become accessible. The original sealing scroll can be copied without triggering security measures. Once the scrolls are obtained, Danzo's resources become open to infiltration. Silence. Absolute silence. Hashirama slowly rubbed his forehead. That's. Actually. He couldn't finish. Tobirama closed his eyes. After several seconds, he finally spoke. It's correct. Madara looked toward him. You agree? Tobirama nodded. Unfortunately, the weakness exists because Danzo trusted his own seal too much. Hashirama laughed bitterly. So, they never stole the techniques by force. Madara slowly smiled. They stole the opportunity. Izuna looked around the room. So that's how they did it. They didn't break into the scroll repository. They didn't assassinate Anbu. They didn't fight Root. They simply found a flaw. Tobirama quietly added. And after copying what they needed, they returned everything, leaving no evidence. Madara slowly closed the notebook. I finally understand. They never thought like shinobi. Hashirama looked at him. What do you mean? Madara smiled faintly. A shinobi sees a locked vault and thinks about how to break in. The five saw a locked vault and asked why the lock existed. They attacked the assumptions. The four continued searching, notebook after notebook. Every conclusion revealed another hidden weakness. Not flaws in techniques, flaws in the people who created them. For the first time, Tobirama quietly admitted something. If these five had wanted, they could have stolen almost every forbidden technique in Konoha. Hashirama looked at the empty shelves. But they didn't. Tobirama nodded. No, they copied the knowledge, returned the originals, and kept only their understanding. Madara smiled. Perhaps that's why they left no evidence. Knowledge takes up no space. The laboratory once again fell silent. The four legends had entered expecting to find stolen secrets. Instead, they found something far more dangerous. Five researchers, who believed every security system was simply another puzzle waiting to be solved. Chapter 142, The Greatest Heist. The laboratory had fallen silent once more. Madara slowly closed the notebook on the cursed tongue eradication seal. Hashirama looked thoughtful. So, they copied Konoha's forbidden techniques. They analyzed them, and then, they returned everything. Tobirama nodded. Which means, there was never any evidence. Madara slowly smiled. No, there was evidence. We simply never noticed it. The other three looked toward him. Madara walked toward another bookshelf. He pulled out a notebook titled Mission Records. It wasn't a mission report. It was merely a list. Forbidden Scroll accessed. Returned successfully. Root Archive accessed. Returned successfully. Uchiha Stone Tablet observed. No physical contact. Medical archives copied. Originals returned. Every entry ended with the same sentence. No trace left behind. Hashirama blinked. Quote. That's terrifying. Tobirama looked at another notebook. Its title made him stop. Operational Principle. He opened it. One sentence was written across the page. Never steal knowledge. Borrow it. Understand it. Return it before anyone notices it was gone. Silence. Madara laughed softly. Ha ha ha. They weren't thieves. They were visitors. Izuna smiled. No wonder nobody suspected them. Hashirama suddenly frowned. Wait, if they copied all these techniques, then, where are the copies? The room became quiet again. They searched every shelf, every drawer, every storage seal. Nothing. No copied scrolls. No forbidden techniques. No archives. Nothing. Tobirama slowly closed his eyes. I understand. Madara looked toward him. They memorized them. Hashirama blinked. All of them. Tobirama nodded. They never intended to preserve the scroll. They intended to preserve the understanding. Madara smiled. So after reaching a conclusion, the original technique became unnecessary. Izuna suddenly noticed another notebook. Its title read, Security Evaluation. He opened it. Inside, every major organization in the ninja world had been listed. Konoha Scroll Repository Security Rating, 4/10. Weaknesses, Human Routine, Predictable Patrols, Overconfidence. Root Headquarters Security Rating, 3/10. Weaknesses, Single Point Ceiling System, Centralized Authority. Danzo himself. Hyuga Clan Archive Security Rating, 6/10. Weaknesses, Overreliance on Byakugan. Blind spots during shift changes. Uchiha Naka Shrine Security Rating, 7/10. Weaknesses, Psychological security stronger than physical security. Stone Tablet itself contains misleading information. Hashirama couldn't help laughing. They rated village security. Tobirama looked increasingly uncomfortable. They didn't evaluate techniques. They evaluated systems. Madara quietly nodded. That's why they succeeded. Everyone else protected scrolls. They studied the people protecting them. At the bottom of the notebook, one final section had been added. Its title made Tobirama's expression change instantly. Konoha Barrier System. Security Rating, 2/10. Weaknesses, Anbu Chakra signatures are permanently recorded. No removal protocol after Anbu death. Barrier recognizes chakra patterns, not identity verification. Exploit method. If one obtains the chakra signature of a deceased Anbu and replicates it accurately, the barrier system will recognize the user as authorized personnel. Result. Entry and exit from Konoha without triggering the barrier detection team. Conclusion. The system grants unintended, VIP access, to anyone capable of mimicking a dead ANBU's chakra signature. Silence. Absolute silence. Hashirama slowly rubbed his forehead. That's a serious flaw. Tobarama's face darkened. I designed that system. He clenched his fist slightly. And I never considered. What happens after an Anbu dies? Madara smirked faintly. They didn't break the barrier. They simply became someone the barrier trusted. Izuna let out a low whistle. So even Konoha's strongest defense was just another assumption. At the bottom of the notebook, one final sentence had been written. The greatest weakness in every security system is not the barrier. It is the person who believes the barrier is perfect. The room became completely silent. Tobarama slowly sighed. I spent my entire life creating security systems. He looked at the notebook. And 5 children spent theirs, finding the assumptions behind them. Madara smiled. They never attacked the walls. They attacked certainty. Hashirama laughed helplessly. I almost pity the villages. Then, Madara found one final folded piece of paper hidden inside the notebook. It looked newer than everything else. He unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably Daichi's. If someone is reading this, congratulations. You finally found our laboratory. If you reached this far, you're probably wondering why we never kept the original techniques. The answer is simple. Knowledge trapped inside a scroll belongs to the scroll. Knowledge inside your own mind belongs to you forever. So why carry unnecessary evidence? Hashirama smiled. That sounds exactly like him. Madara carefully folded the paper. Then quietly said, they never collected techniques. They collected understanding. The 4 legends stood silently inside the underground laboratory. They had come searching for forbidden scrolls. Instead, they found 5 researchers, who believed that the greatest treasure in the world was not a technique, but the ability to understand why the technique worked in the first place. Chapter 143, The Story That Spread Across the World. Several days later, the investigation finally came to an end. Madara closed the last notebook. There are no more clues. Hashirama nodded. We found everything they wanted us to find. Tobarama added. And nothing they wanted to keep hidden. Izuna smiled. As expected, they controlled the investigation. Years before we even began it, the underground laboratory was sealed once again. The hidden entrance disappeared behind layers of sealing arrays. The 4 left without taking a single notebook, without copying a single page. Everything remained exactly where the 5 had left it. Life in Konoha gradually returned to normal. Madara resumed training. Tobarama became busy improving Konoha's barrier system after discovering its flaws. Izuna returned to the Uchiha clan. Hashirama, as usual, spent most of his time talking with the younger generation. One afternoon, Hashirama sat beneath a large tree inside Konoha. Around him, dozens of academy students had gathered. There were children from almost every major clan. Uchiha, Senju, Hyuga, Nara, Akamichi, Yamanaka, Aburame, Inuzuka, even a few civilian children. One little boy suddenly asked, Lord First Hokage, who was the strongest Uchiha after Lord Madara? Hashirama scratched his head. Strongest, he smiled. I don't know, but I do know the strangest. The children's eyes immediately lit up. Tell us, we want to hear. Hashirama laughed. All right, then I'll tell you a story. A story about 5 very strange Uchiha children. This time, Hashirama didn't hold back. He smiled and said clearly. Their names were Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, and Kaien. The children froze for a moment. Then excitement exploded. Real names. They really existed. Hashirama nodded casually. Of course they existed. They were real children of Konoha. He continued the story. 5 orphaned children. No parents. No teachers. No famous masters. They were considered completely average. They never ranked first. They never attracted attention. But every one of them secretly researched impossible things from the age of 7. The children listened with wide eyes. Hashirama continued. They met each other on a mission when they were 10 years old. They discovered they weren't the only strange ones. So they became friends. And from then on, they spent almost every day researching together. A young Hyuga girl asked, did they become Hokage? Hashirama smiled. No, they didn't want fame. An Uchiha boy asked, were they famous heroes? Hashirama laughed. No, officially, they died as ordinary chunin. The children gasped. Hashirama continued telling the story. How they questioned every technique. How they tested every theory. How they failed thousands of times. How they hid themselves. How they valued understanding over power. He never intended to reveal a secret. To him, it was simply an interesting story. A story about 5 extraordinary children. Unfortunately, among the listeners, were children from every major clan. Children loved telling stories. That evening, one Uchiha child ran home. "Father, Lord Hashirama told us about 5 amazing Uchiha. He even told their names." A Hyuga girl excitedly told her clan elders. They were called Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, and Kaien. They started researching at 7 years old. A Nara boy repeated the story to his father. They became friends because they argued about theories all night. Within hours, the story had spread throughout Konoha. But this time, something changed. The elders of Konoha frowned. Those names, they sound familiar. The Uchiha clan immediately began investigating. Records were pulled out. Old mission logs were checked. Academy archives were opened. Within a single night, they found them. 5 names: Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, Kaien, all recorded as real Uchiha children. All listed as average students. All with unremarkable records. All officially dead as Chunin. Silence filled the room. They really existed. Another elder whispered, which means, they fooled everyone. From childhood, they hid everything. They lived in Konoha, right under our eyes, and no one noticed. Shock spread through the village. The next morning, merchants carried the story to neighboring villages. Shinobi repeated it during missions. Travelers discussed it in taverns. The world chat exploded. Leaf Genant, the names are real. They existed in Konoha records. Cloud Jonant, wait, they weren't legends. Mist Chunant, they were real people. Stone Shinobi, they fooled an entire village. Sand Genant, from childhood. Within a single day, every hidden village knew the truth. Not only their past, but also their names. Children throughout the ninja world became even more fascinated. They were real. They started at 7, so I can start now. Academy students began keeping notebooks. Some started writing theories. Others began experimenting with chakra control. Teachers looked on in confusion. Far away, inside the researchers' headquarters, Daichi was drinking tea when his phone vibrated. He looked at the world chat. Then nearly choked. Cough, cough. Ren took the phone. His eyes widened. Quote. Hashirama. Shun calmly continued reading. He told everyone. Akira adjusted his glasses. He told. Our names. Kaien sighed deeply. So now, the whole ninja world knows we existed. Daichi leaned back in his chair. After several seconds, he burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. He really said everything. Ren laughed as well. He didn't even hesitate. Shun smiled faintly. That sounds exactly like Hashirama. Akira closed the world chat. At least, they still don't know where we are. Kaien nodded. But now, they know we fooled an entire village. Daichi grinned. Honestly, that part is kind of impressive. Outside, across the entire ninja world, countless children picked up notebooks for the first time. Not because they wanted to become famous. Not because they wanted to become Hokage. But because they had heard a simple story. A story about 5 ordinary orphaned children, who had lived in plain sight, and fooled everyone from the very beginning. Chapter 144, The World Starts Looking. The effects of Hashirama's story spread much faster than anyone expected. This time, it wasn't only children discussing it. Adults were as well. Inside Konoha, an old academy instructor stared at a faded graduation photograph. 5 familiar faces stood quietly in the back row. Daichi, Ren, Shun, Akira, Kaien. The instructor smiled bitterly. I taught them for years. And I can't remember a single remarkable thing they ever did. Across the village, retired Jonin dug through old mission records. One frowned. I escorted these 5 once. They barely spoke. Another shook his head. No, I remember them. They finished every mission. They never caused trouble. They were forgettable. The realization sent chills down their spines. Inside the Uchiha clan, the elders gathered once again. One elder quietly said, Hashirama was right. They really were ordinary in everyone's eyes. Another looked at their old academy reports. No, they made us believe they were ordinary. Meanwhile, the other hidden villages also became interested. Not because of the 5 themselves, but because of the possibility. Inside the hidden cloud, the Raikage looked toward his advisors. If Konoha produced 5 monsters, without realizing it, what about us? Immediately, the Cloud Village ordered a review of every academy graduate from the last 20 years. The Hidden Stone did the same. The Hidden Mist followed. Even the Hidden Sand began investigating. Every village asked the same question. Did we also overlook someone? For weeks, records were examined. Academy reports, mission logs, promotion records, psychological evaluations, everything. The final result, was disappointing. Nothing. No hidden geniuses. No mysterious researchers. No second group like the five. One stone elder sighed. So, it really happened only once. Back in Konoha, Madara quietly watched the reports arrive. Every village had reached the same conclusion. The five were unique, not because they possessed special bloodlines. Not because they were born stronger. But because five extraordinary minds had somehow met each other. Hashirama scratched his head. I think, I accidentally caused a worldwide investigation. Tobirama sighed. You certainly did. Izuna laughed. And they still found nothing. Madara folded his arms. They never would. Hashirama looked toward him. So certain. Madara nodded. Because they're searching for another five. He looked out the window. But there won't be another. Far away, inside the researchers' headquarters, the five were also reading the reports. Daichi burst into laughter. So now, every village is searching for hidden geniuses. Ren smiled. They're copying the wrong thing. Akira nodded. They're looking for children like us. Shun calmly added. When they should be creating an environment where children can think freely. Kaien closed another report. Exactly. They believe the answer is finding talent. He shook his head. The answer was never talent. Daichi looked around the room. 5 desks, 5 chairs, countless notebooks. Then he smiled. The answer was finding people who never laughed at impossible ideas. The room became quiet. No one disagreed, because they all remembered the first night they met. 5 lonely children, talking until sunrise, not because they wanted power, but because, for the first time in their lives, someone understood what they were saying. Outside, the ninja world searched desperately for another group of 5 extraordinary children. They would never find them. Because the true miracle had never been 5 geniuses being born. It had been 5 lonely children, finding one another before the world convinced them to stop asking impossible questions. Chapter 145, The Answer Everyone Reached. Hashirama's story continued spreading. At first, people treated it as an interesting tale. Then, someone asked a simple question. If those 5 children really existed, and 5 mysterious Uchiha later appeared, could they be the same people? The question spread across the world chat. Within hours, every village was discussing the same possibility. Leaf Jonin 5 orphaned Uchiha. Cloud Shinobi 5 masked Uchiha. Stone Jonin 5 researchers. Mist Anbu the numbers match. Sand Shinobi they even disappeared from history at the same time. One theory after another appeared. Until almost everyone reached the same conclusion. They have to be the creators. There can't be another group. The 5 strange Uchiha children grew up to become the 5 masked researchers. The theory spread so quickly that it became accepted as common knowledge. No one had proof, but every clue pointed in the same direction. Inside the Hokage office, Hashirama looked at the latest intelligence report, then sighed. I didn't expect this. Tobirama folded his arms. It was inevitable. Once you revealed their names, people connected the dots. Izuna smiled. It isn't a bad deduction. Madara nodded. They're correct. They just can't prove it. The other hidden villages also received the reports. The 4th Raikage slowly placed the document on his desk. So, it was them. He remembered waking up years ago, hanging upside down before the Cloud Village's main gate. His entire body had been covered in bruises. He had never even seen his attacker. Now, everything made sense. In the hidden stone, Onoki let out a long sigh. So those 5 children humiliated all 5 great villages. He couldn't decide whether to laugh or feel ashamed. The Mizukage smiled bitterly. No wonder. None of us remembered their faces. The Case-Cage quietly looked out the window. We were searching for famous people. When the answer had already died. On paper. Back in Konoha, Danzo sat alone inside Root headquarters. His expression grew darker with every report. He slammed the papers onto his desk. Bang. Those 5 children. His breathing became heavier. The 5 who infiltrated Root. The 5 who bypassed my seal. The 5 who copied my archives. The 5 who hung me. Were just ordinary Chunin. His face twisted with rage. No. Impossible. He remembered the notebook's conclusion. Danzo is the biggest fool involved in this design. Those words echoed repeatedly in his mind. For years, he had believed Root's security was flawless. Now, he realized, they had probably entered Root dozens of times, copied everything, returned everything, and left, without him noticing even once. Danzo crushed the report in his hand. They didn't defeat Root, they mocked it. For the first time in years, Danzo doubted his own abilities. Not because he had lost a battle, but because he had never even realized. The battle had already happened. Meanwhile, Inside the researchers' headquarters, the five read the newest discussions on the world chat. Daichi grinned. So, the whole world thinks we're the creators now. Ren laughed. They're only a few years late. Shun calmly sipped his tea. They still don't know where we are. Akira adjusted his glasses. They also don't know how much we've already changed since then. Kyan smiled faintly. Let them investigate. They've finally found the correct answer. He closed the report. But they still have no way to reach the solution. Outside, across the entire ninja world, the mystery had finally been solved. Everyone now believed they knew who the five creators were. Yet, the five themselves continued drinking tea in an ordinary shop. Passing shinobi greeted them casually. No one gave them a second glance. The greatest irony of all was that after discovering the truth, the entire ninja world still couldn't recognize the five men sitting quietly among them. Chapter 146, A 30% Vacation. Several weeks passed. The researchers' headquarters had become unusually quiet. Daichi looked around the empty control room. Where's the dog? Ren looked up from his sword. Good question. Normally, he barges in every morning with another mountain of paperwork. Shun calmly sipped his tea. Too quiet. Akira adjusted his glasses. I checked the system. He hasn't logged into the control room for 3 days. Kyan smiled. So, our administrator finally took a vacation. At that moment, a familiar portal appeared. Whoosh. The husky casually walked out. Its fur looked much smoother. Its suit was perfectly ironed. It even carried a cup of coffee. Daichi stared blankly. You look relaxed. The husky smiled proudly. I am. Shun immediately understood. He put down his teacup. You deployed our functions to your side of the system. The husky wagged its tail. Correct. Daichi blinked. Already. The husky nodded. Not all of them. I'm not that reckless. I only deployed several functions that had already been tested thoroughly in the ninja world. Akira became interested. Results. The husky's smile became even wider. My workload decreased by 30%. Silence. Ren nearly dropped his sword. 30%. The husky nodded proudly. For the first time in thousands of years, I actually had free time. I even slept. Daichi looked horrified. Dungeon system sleep. The husky answered seriously. No, but now I have enough free time to learn. Kyan smiled. So, the experiment succeeded. The husky nodded. Completely. The automatic team synchronization system. The improved reward verification. The multi-team dungeon scheduler. The monster aggression adjustment. They're all working perfectly. Shun quietly asked, what about the blockchain reward system? The husky immediately became excited. I came specifically because of that. It placed several reports on the table. The experience and gold distribution algorithm. How long until it's finished? Akira answered honestly. We're still testing edge cases. About 73% complete. The husky let out a disappointed sigh. Too bad. Daichi looked confused. You're that interested? The husky immediately nodded. You have no idea. It opened another report. Hundreds of graphs filled the pages. Do you know what causes the most paperwork in the entire dungeon network? The five shook their heads. The husky pointed at one graph. 44%. 44% of my paperwork comes from reward distribution disputes. Ren frowned. Seriously? The husky nodded. Players arguing. I dealt more damage. The healer deserves more. The tank should receive extra rewards. Support classes aren't rewarded fairly. Someone stole my kill. It buried its face in its paws. I've processed complaints for several thousand years. Kyan frowned slightly. 44%. Isn't that a bit too high? Is it really that bad even for beginner-level distributions? The husky shook its head. Of course not all of it comes from beginners. There are high-level players too. High-level teams already have experience sharing functions. So within stable teams, there are fewer disputes. It paused, then looked at them seriously. But, didn't I tell you about the above level 100 multi-team dungeons? The room fell silent. The husky continued. Those dungeons require multiple teams. Different groups. Unfamiliar players. No trust. No coordination. It sighed. That's where most of the problems come from. Who contributed more? Which team deserves the boss reward? Who gets rare drops? The husky shook its head. When strangers are forced to cooperate, distribution becomes chaos. Shun nodded slowly. So the issue isn't just calculation. It's trust. Akira added, and the blockchain system removes that variable. No trust required. Only verified data. The husky's eyes sparkled again. Exactly. Kyan smiled. So once it's finished, you'll finally be free from that 44%. The husky looked almost emotional. At least most of it. And I can finally relax even more. Shun quietly explained, the users themselves verify every action. No central calculation. No administrator judgment. No favoritism. The network reaches consensus. The system only distributes the rewards. The husky nodded repeatedly. It is beautiful. If you perfect that algorithm, tell me immediately. It looked at the five with unusually serious eyes. I don't care if nothing else is finished. But it must be deployed. Akira looked at the reports. We'll need more stress testing. Millions of simulated users. Extreme combat scenarios. Intentional cheating attempts. The husky nodded. Good. Test everything. I'd rather wait another year than deploy a system with one hidden bug. Daichi laughed. You finally learned. The husky glared at him. I learned. From you five. You kept telling me. Never deploy untested research. Ren smiled. So now, you're becoming a proper researcher. The husky proudly puffed out its chest. I even started writing bug reports. Shun raised an eyebrow. With conclusions. The husky grinned. And failed attempts. The five looked at one another. Then laughed. Without realizing it, the ancient dungeon system, which had existed for countless ages, had slowly begun thinking exactly like them. Not as an administrator. Not as a manager. But as a researcher. And somewhere, deep within the endless worlds connected by the dungeon network, millions of users unknowingly benefited. Because five researchers had reduced an ancient administrator's workload by 30%. Simply by teaching it one lesson. A good system doesn't work harder. It makes unnecessary work disappear. Chapter 147, Breaking the Distribution System. The moment the husky left, the atmosphere inside the headquarters completely changed. Daichi stood up. Everything else can wait. Ren nodded. The blockchain reward system comes first. Akira closed every other research project. I agree. Shun rolled up dozens of unfinished scrolls. We'll suspend all current research. Kyan looked toward the control screen. This one project is now our highest priority. The five entered the control room. A giant holographic map of the multi-team monster horde dungeon appeared. Kyan enlarged it. We'll use this dungeon. Daichi nodded. The perfect testing ground. Ren smiled. It already simulates hundreds of independent teams. Akira added. And the battlefield complexity is close to high-level dungeons. Shun finished. If this system survives here, it'll survive almost anywhere. The experiment officially began. The first several days, nothing unusual happened. The blockchain algorithm accurately distributed experience. Gold, drops, contribution, everything looked perfect. Daichi frowned. Too perfect. Ren smiled. Which means, we haven't tried hard enough. From that day onward, the five completely changed their approach. Instead of testing normal situations, they began creating abnormal ones. Impossible ones. Ridiculous ones. Experiment 1. A player attacked a monster. Another player healed the monster. Who deserved the experience? The system froze for half a second. Bug found. Experiment 2. A summoned beast dealt the final blow. Should the reward belong to the summoner? Or the summon? Bug found. Experiment 3. Two teams fought one monster. A third team healed one of the first teams. How should support contribution be calculated? Another bug. Experiment 4. A player deliberately pushed another player into a monster's attack. Who caused the damage? Bug. Daichi grinned. We're finally getting somewhere. Then, Shun created an even stranger experiment. Several teams quietly observed another team fighting. Without warning, he manipulated one wandering monster. The monster charged toward another monster. Instead of attacking players, it struck another monster. The monster actually dealt damage. Everyone stared at the screen. Several seconds later, the blockchain algorithm displayed its calculation. Experience allocated. Recipient. Monster number. 4821. Silence. Ren blinked. Did our system just reward a monster? Akira covered his face. Yes. Daichi burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. Our blockchain just made the monsters level up. Kyan immediately wrote another note. Bug number 2198. Non-player entities capable of dealing damage are mistakenly recognized as valid contribution participants. Priority, critical. Shun calmly added another comment. Every participant must first pass identity verification. Monsters are combat objects, not reward receivers. The experiments became even crazier. A monster accidentally knocked another monster off a cliff. The system rewarded the falling damage. Bug. A player reflected a monster's attack back at itself. The contribution split incorrectly. Bug. A healer accidentally healed an enemy monster. The algorithm considered it positive support. Bug. An illusion caused one monster to attack another. Half the reward vanished. Bug. Daichi smiled wider with every failure. This is real research. Ren looked at the growing list. We're already past 3,000 bugs. Akira nodded. And every one of them would become millions of complaints later. Weeks passed. The five barely slept. The control room became covered with notes. Walls, floors, tables, even the ceiling. Every strange interaction, every impossible situation, every exploit, was carefully recorded. Finally, Kaien looked at the latest statistics. Current bug count, 4,826. Shun quietly smiled. Good. Daichi blinked. Good. Shun nodded. I'd rather discover 4,000 bugs here than let 4 billion users discover them later. The room became silent. Everyone agreed. Far away, the Husky looked at its administrator dashboard. The blockchain project status had changed. Testing progress, 81%. Below it, another number quietly increased. Known bugs eliminated, 4,826. The Husky smiled. As expected, those five aren't creating a reward system. They're trying to break it before anyone else can. And that was exactly why the Husky trusted them with the future of the dungeon network. Chapter 148, Building Something That Never Existed. Another 3 weeks passed. The blockchain project continued. Every day, the bug counter increased. Every day, another impossible situation was discovered. Far away, the Husky checked the administrator panel as usual. Its eyes suddenly widened. Known bugs eliminated, 12,486. The Husky blinked twice. 12,000. It immediately opened a portal. Inside the research headquarters, the five were still arguing. Daichi was drawing combat scenarios. Ren was simulating battlefield movements. Akira was checking millions of calculation records. Shun was writing correction algorithms. Kaien continuously modified the system architecture. No one even noticed the Husky arrive. The Husky coughed. Ahem. Nothing. It coughed louder. Still nothing. Finally, it shouted, "Do you five need any help?" The room finally became quiet. Kaien looked up first. Help. The Husky nodded seriously. I've been watching your progress. You've already eliminated more than 12,000 bugs. If there's anything you need, I can arrange it. Daichi raised an eyebrow. Arrange what? The Husky immediately answered. Books, experts, teachers, anything. Kaien smiled. The blockchain system itself isn't the difficult part. The difficult part is adapting its principles to the dungeon system. The Husky suddenly slapped its forehead. Oh, the shop. The shop should have books about blockchain technology. It's an ordinary technology after all. If it doesn't, I can ask the shop to import them. It became even more excited. If books aren't enough, I can even bring the original creator. The five stared at it. The Husky proudly continued. If necessary, I'll issue a kidnapping order. He'll be here within 2 days. Silence. Daichi slowly turned toward Shun. Did it just casually suggest kidnapping someone? Ren sighed. It's learning strange things. Shun smiled faintly. There is no need. The Husky tilted its head. Why? Shun calmly explained. In my previous world, blockchain technology was created to secure virtual currency. It is a security technology, an extremely secure one, but it was still designed for one purpose: protecting digital transactions. He looked toward the countless diagrams covering the walls. We aren't building another virtual currency. We aren't even building another blockchain. We're only borrowing its most fundamental principle. Akira continued. Decentralized verification, immutable records, consensus before confirmation. Those ideas are valuable. Kaien pointed toward the battlefield simulation. But our system is doing something completely different. It has to calculate combat, contribution, healing, support, summons, environmental damage, friendly fire, multi-team cooperation, and millions of events every second. Ren smiled. The difficulty isn't understanding blockchain. It's redesigning it for a battlefield. The Husky slowly nodded. I see. Shun continued. So even if the inventor of blockchain came here, he would be of very little help. He understands the old system. We're creating a completely new one. Daichi laughed. We're researchers, not copyists. Akira added. If we simply copied blockchain, it would fail immediately. Our bugs exist because no one has ever attempted this before. Kaien looked toward the giant bug counter. 12,000 bugs is actually good news. The Husky blinked. Good. Kaien nodded. Every bug proves we're exploring territory that has never existed. If someone already knew the answer, there wouldn't be 12,000 bugs. The husky remained silent for several moments. Then, it smiled. I understand now. You aren't improving blockchain. You've already gone beyond it. Shun quietly nodded. We're creating the first decentralized combat contribution system. There is no textbook, no teacher, no inventor, no precedent. The husky slowly looked around the room. Every wall was filled with equations. Every table was covered with rejected ideas. Thousands of pages had failed written across them. For the first time, it truly understood what these 5 had been doing. They weren't fixing an old technology. They were standing at the very beginning of a brand new field. And every bug they solved was another law being written for a technology that had never existed before. Chapter 149, Research Never Ends. Another month passed. The blockchain project had reached its final stage. The bug counter finally slowed down. Known bugs eliminated, 18,973. The 5 quietly looked at the number. Daichi smiled. We're finally running out of ways to break it. Ren shook his head. No, we're running out of imagination. Akira stood before the giant display. The system has now survived over 300 million simulated battles. Single-player dungeons, party dungeons, multi-team raids, monster horde dungeons. No critical bugs have appeared in the last 5 days. Shun remained silent. Then he spoke. 5 days isn't enough. Daichi sighed. I knew you'd say that. Kaien nodded. He's right. The absence of bugs doesn't prove the system is correct. It only proves we haven't discovered the next bug yet. At that moment, the husky appeared once again. It looked at the giant bug counter. Then looked at the 5. So, is it finished? Silence. The 5 looked at each other. Then, all 5 answered together. No. The husky blinked. No. Akira pointed at the statistics. There are no known critical bugs. Ren added. But, there are probably still unknown ones. The husky scratched its head. So, how do you find bugs you don't know exist? Daichi grinned. You don't. You wait until someone asks a stupid question. The others laughed. The husky looked confused. A stupid question. Shun nodded. Almost every major breakthrough started with someone asking something ridiculous. Right then, a notification appeared. One of the younger researchers from the Dungeon Network had submitted a test report. Question. What happens if a player dies at the exact moment they level up while simultaneously changing teams during a dungeon merge? The control room fell silent. Daichi slowly smiled. Now that's a beautiful question. Akira immediately began a simulation. 10 seconds later, the screen flashed red. Critical error detected. The blockchain entered an endless verification loop. Rewards stopped processing. Ren laughed. There it is. Our next bug. The husky stared blankly. You found another one. Kaien nodded. We didn't. The question found it. Shun quietly wrote another sentence into the project notebook. Never underestimate absurd questions. They often reveal invisible assumptions. The husky looked at the notebook. Then quietly asked. So, when will this project finally end? The room became silent. Daichi looked toward the thousands of pages filling the laboratory. Then smiled. It won't. The husky tilted its head. What? Akira calmly explained. The first version will end. The second version will begin. The second will become the third. The third. The fourth. Kaien nodded. A perfect system doesn't exist. Ren smiled. Every solution creates new possibilities. Shun closed the project notebook. And new possibilities create new problems. The husky slowly sat down. After a long silence, it laughed. I finally understand. I kept asking, when will your research end? He looked at the 5. But researchers never ask that question. Daichi smiled. No, we only ask, what's next? The blockchain project notebook was finally closed. On its last page, Shun wrote only one sentence. Version 1 complete. Below it, Daichi immediately added another line. Version 2 planning starts tomorrow. The husky covered its face with both paws. I should have known. The 5 burst into laughter. For ordinary people, finishing a project meant celebrating. For the 5 researchers, finishing a project simply meant they were finally ready to begin the next one. Chapter 150, Let the World Break It. The control room was unusually quiet. The blockchain project had reached a bottleneck. For the first time in months, the bug counter barely moved. The 6 of them, the 5 researchers and the husky, sat around a large circular table. No one spoke for several minutes. Akira finally broke the silence. We're running out of ideas. Daichi looked toward him. What do you mean? Akira pointed at the simulation screen. Our brains have already adapted to the system. When we create a scenario, our minds immediately predict the result. We unconsciously avoid many strange situations. He sighed. No matter how hard we try, we're still only 6 people. The room became silent again. Ren suddenly leaned back in his chair. After thinking for a while, he smiled. I have an idea. Everyone looked toward him. Why don't we let the users find the bugs? The husky tilted its head. The users. Ren nodded. We'll announce it to the entire ninja world. Break the blockchain distribution system. If anyone discovers a bug and reports it to us, we'll reward them with gold coins. Daichi's eyes lit up. Ha ha ha. Bug bounty. I like it. Ren continued. The ninja world has never been short of researchers, lunatics, creative people, clever people. Everyone thinks differently. Someone will eventually imagine situations that the 6 of us never would. Kaien nodded. Good. We'll also continuously monitor every battle. If the system misses a reward, or distributes something incorrectly, we'll compare it against our own calculations. So, even if the players overlook a bug, we still have a chance to discover it ourselves. Daichi smiled. So, the players become our first line of testing. We become the second. Shun quietly added. We should guide them. Most of the experiments should be performed inside the multi-team monster horde dungeon. Everyone looked toward him. Shun explained calmly. That dungeon already contains hundreds of teams, hundreds of monsters, support players, healers, summons, environmental damage, bosses, large-scale cooperation. It naturally produces the most complicated combat situations. Akira nodded. And it is also a controlled environment. If a bug appears, we can immediately replay the battle, analyze every action, and reproduce the error. The husky slowly smiled. So, instead of 6 researchers, we'll have millions. Kaien corrected him. No. He pointed toward the simulation screen. They won't become researchers. They'll become testers. The researchers will still be us. The husky laughed. Fair enough. Daichi immediately began writing the announcement. Dungeon system announcement. Blockchain reward distribution public test. A new reward distribution system is currently under development. We invite every player in the ninja world to challenge it. Find bugs. Find incorrect reward allocations. Find situations where rewards disappear or are distributed unfairly. Every confirmed bug report will receive a generous gold coin reward. Testing is highly recommended inside the multi-team monster horde dungeon, where the system experiences its highest level of complexity. Every report helps improve the future of the dungeon network. Ren read it. Looks good. Akira smiled. By tomorrow, we'll probably receive thousands of reports. The husky laughed. Thousands. You underestimate people. I predict millions. Shun quietly closed his notebook. Good. The more people trying to break it, the stronger the final system will become. The announcement was sent. Within seconds, every phone in the ninja world vibrated. Players stared at the message. Then, the world chat exploded. Leaf Genin, they're actually paying us to find bugs. Cloud Jonin, finally. Breaking things is my specialty. Stone Chunin, I was born for this. Mist Anbu, so, we attack the system instead of monsters. Sand Researcher, this is the greatest event the dungeon system has ever held. Inside the control room, the husky looked at the rapidly increasing number of participants. It quietly smiled. 6 people, just recruited an entire world. And for the first time, the greatest quality assurance team in the history of the dungeon network was no longer made up of administrators. It was made up of millions of curious players, all trying their hardest to break the system. Chapter 151, The Researchers Go to War. The announcement had only been public for 1 day. Already, more than 5 million players had entered the multi-team monster horde dungeon. Most wanted the reward, some wanted the challenge, but a small group wanted something else. They wanted to prove they were smarter than the system. Inside one dungeon, a group of researchers from the Hidden Leaf gathered. One of them smiled. We're not here to clear the dungeon. We're here to break the reward system. The others grinned. Agreed. Their first experiment was simple. 1 player attacked. The second only healed. The third only provided sensory support. The fourth only set traps. After the battle, they carefully compared the reward distribution. One researcher immediately wrote everything into a notebook. No bug. Next, another group from the hidden cloud had a completely different idea. What happens if 100 players attack the same monster at exactly the same time? Let's find out. The battlefield exploded with lightning release. 100 attacks landed simultaneously. The reward system paused for a fraction of a second. Everyone held their breath. Then, rewards appeared perfectly. No bug. Deep inside another dungeon, a Nara researcher smiled. You're all thinking too normally. He pointed toward a cliff. Push the monster. His teammates looked confused. Why? What if fall damage isn't treated correctly? They spent the next hour trying to throw monsters off cliffs. Result: no bug. Meanwhile, 3 young researchers from the Hidden Mist looked at each other. We're approaching this wrong. The system expects players to cooperate. So, let's betray each other. They immediately began sabotaging one another. Interrupting attacks, blocking teammates, stealing aggro, healing monsters, creating complete chaos. Finally, one player deliberately died while another revived him. Still, the rewards remained correct. One side, They're getting annoying. Inside another dungeon, a young civilian researcher sat quietly. He hadn't attacked a single monster. Instead, he simply observed every movement, every reward, every calculation. After several hours, he smiled. I found something. His teammates immediately surrounded him. What? He pointed toward a summoned wolf. When the summoner dies, the wolf survives for 3 more seconds. Everyone nodded. So, what if the wolf lands the final hit during those 3 seconds? Silence. They immediately recreated the situation. The wolf killed the monster. The reward window froze. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. System notification. Error detected. The civilian researcher jumped to his feet. I found one. His entire team burst into cheers. Inside the headquarters, Akira's screen flashed red. Bug report confirmed. Kaien smiled. Interesting. Shun immediately replayed the battle. Daichi laughed. I never thought about that. Ren nodded. Neither did I. Akira wrote another note. Bug 18974. Summoned creatures temporarily surviving after the owner's death may become ownerless contributors. Reward ownership becomes undefined. Fix immediately. More reports poured in. A Hyuga researcher asked, what if 2 healers heal each other forever without attacking? No bug. An Uchiha researcher used genjutsu to make teammates attack illusions. No bug. An Aburame researcher sent insects to deal microscopic damage every second. No bug. An Uzumaki researcher filled the battlefield with ceiling arrays, trying to confuse the calculations. No bug. The reports kept coming. Thousands every hour. Most ended with, no issue found. But every once in a while, a brilliant mind discovered something unexpected. Late that night, the 5 researchers quietly watched the incoming reports. Daichi smiled. I underestimated them. Ren nodded. The ninja world really is full of lunatics. Akira corrected him. Researchers. Shun looked at the endless stream of reports. They're asking the same kind of strange questions we would ask. Kaien smiled. And every answer makes the system stronger. Far away, across the ninja world, countless researchers stayed awake through the night. Not because they wanted stronger rewards. Not because they wanted higher levels. But because, somewhere inside the dungeon system, there was still another bug waiting to be discovered. And they wanted to be the first person in history to find it. Chapter 152, The Greatest Minds Join the Hunt. The bug bounty announcement spread across the entire ninja world. Ordinary players participated for the gold coins. Researchers participated for curiosity. But a handful of people participated for an entirely different reason. They wanted to challenge the minds of the 5 researchers. Inside the Hokage office, Tobarama stared at the announcement. Then smiled. Interesting. Hashirama looked over his shoulder. You're joining too. Tobarama nodded. Of course. I've spent my entire life creating systems. I want to know whether theirs is truly better. That afternoon, Tobarama entered the multi-team monster horde dungeon. He ignored every monster. Ignored every teammate. Instead, he observed the reward window after every battle. His notebook rapidly filled with equations. After several hours, he muttered, Elegant. Then, a faint smile appeared, but not perfect. His teammates looked excited. Lord Second Hokage, did you find a bug? Tobarama shook his head. No, I found an assumption. Instead of attacking monsters, he spent the next 6 hours creating increasingly complicated support combinations. Healing, sealing, buffing, debuffing, indirect damage, environmental manipulation. Every result matched the blockchain's calculations. For the first time in years, Tobarama felt challenged. Elsewhere, Izuna Uchiha had entered another dungeon. Unlike Tobarama, he focused entirely on teamwork. He intentionally created chaotic battle formations, random team switching, fake retreats, unexpected reinforcements, even deliberately confusing command chains. After every battle, he compared his own calculations with the system. Not once. Did it make a mistake? Izuna laughed. So, you expected commanders like me. Far away. Orochimaru quietly smiled after reading the announcement. A system designed to be broken. How fascinating. Kabuto looked nervous. Lord Orochimaru, you aren't thinking. Orochimaru smiled wider. Naturally. If I cannot break it, then perhaps I can learn from it. Inside the dungeon, Orochimaru ignored the monsters entirely. Instead, he tested every interaction involving summons. Snakes, clones, temporary bodies, replacement techniques, even deliberately sacrificing summons at precise moments. Every strange interaction became another experiment. Several hours later, he laughed softly. Ha ha ha, I haven't enjoyed research this much in years. Meanwhile, the Nara clan had turned the announcement into a clan-wide project. Inside the Nara library, dozens of geniuses surrounded a giant blackboard. One elder calmly spoke. We are not testing combat. We are testing logic. Hundreds of battle scenarios covered the board. What if 3 teams merge into 2? What if a healer changes teams halfway through combat? What if one player disconnects during reward calculation? Every possibility was carefully analyzed. Before anyone even entered a dungeon, Shikaku smiled. Everyone else is searching randomly. Wheel attack. The mathematics. Several hours later, a young Nara quietly raised his hand. I think. ... I found an impossible situation. The room immediately became silent. Elsewhere, the Yamanaka clan attacked the system psychologically. What happens if communication itself becomes corrupted? They deliberately sent contradictory battlefield information. Still, the reward calculations remained correct. The Akamichi clan took a much simpler approach. What happens if we eat everything? They tested whether consuming battlefield objects affected contribution calculations. The answer was no. The Aburame clan filled entire battlefields with insects. Millions of tiny attacks, millions of tiny calculations. Even the blockchain had to process an absurd number of participants. Akira later admitted, the insect simulations nearly doubled our processing load. The Hyuga clan observed every movement with the Byakugan, searching for hidden variables, searching for invisible calculations, searching for flaws. Even Madara quietly entered the dungeon. He fought normally, but his Sharingan constantly analyzed the system's behavior. After an entire day, he quietly smiled. I still haven't found a weakness. Back inside the research headquarters, the 5 watched the incoming reports. Akira displayed a chart. Tobirama, 412 reports, 0 confirmed bugs. Izuna, 301 reports, 0 bugs. Orochimaru, 593 reports, 1 possible exploit under review. Nara clan, 721 logical scenarios, 3 confirmed bugs. Daichi laughed. I knew the Nara would be troublesome. Ren nodded. They don't fight the system. They corner it. Shun quietly looked at the report. The greatest researchers aren't trying to prove us wrong. They're trying to make the system better. Kaien smiled. And that's exactly why we invited them. Outside, the multi-team monster horde dungeon had become something entirely different. It was no longer just a dungeon. It had become the largest collaborative research laboratory in the history of the ninja world. For the first time, the greatest minds of every village were no longer competing to defeat one another. They were competing to discover the next flaw in a system, so that everyone could benefit from fixing it. Chapter 153, The Bug Hunters. A week passed. The blockchain bug bounty had become the most popular event in the dungeon system. Every day, millions of reports arrived. Most were useless, some were duplicates, but a few were extraordinary. Inside the control room, Akira projected the latest statistics. Total bug reports, 8,734,251. Verified reports, 42,816. Duplicate reports, 8,687,940. Critical bugs, 17. Daichi whistled. So many people found the same bugs. Akira nodded. The first person receives the full reward. Everyone else simply confirmed it. The husky smiled. I've never seen researchers this motivated. Shun suddenly spoke. Sort the reports by the person. The screen immediately changed. The room became silent. Top bug hunters. 1. Tobirama Senju. Confirmed bugs, 2,914. 2. Orochimaru. Confirmed bugs, 2,307. 3. Nara Clan Research Team. Confirmed bugs, 2,118. 4. Kabuto Yakushi. Confirmed bugs, 1,542. 5. Izuna Uchiha. Confirmed bugs, 1,416. Daichi blinked. Tobirama is terrifying. Ren laughed. He treats bugs like enemy spies. Akira opened Tobarama's reports. None of them were ordinary. Bug number 10,382. 3 ceiling arrays activating simultaneously during teleportation delay reward confirmation. Bug number 10,417. Contribution overflow after repeated support buffs exceeded internal calculation limits. Bug number 10,463. Reward verification conflict when battlefield terrain itself dealt the final damage. The husky quietly read them. Then sighed. I wouldn't have found those in another 1,000 years. Shun nodded. Tobarama doesn't think like a player. He thinks like a system designer. Next, Akira opened Orochimaru's reports. The room immediately became strange. Bug number 11,307. Temporary clone possessing another temporary clone caused duplicated ownership records. Bug number 11,362. Summoning contract transfer between dying users confused contribution history. Bug number 11,418. Artificially grown biological bodies receiving shared rewards. Daichi slowly looked toward the husky. Quote. Should we even allow him to continue? The husky laughed nervously. He keeps creating situations that shouldn't exist. Ren smiled. That's Orochimaru. Then, the Nara clan reports appeared. Every report contained almost no battle footage. Only flowcharts, decision trees, logic diagrams. One report simply read, if statement A and statement B are simultaneously true, the reward system reaches a contradiction. Below it, the exact battlefield experiment proving the contradiction. Akira smiled. They found the bug. Before entering the dungeon, Kaien nodded. They solved it with mathematics. Kabuto's reports looked different again. Every bug involved medicine, healing, cell regeneration, poisons, delayed damage, recovery effects. He found interactions no one else even considered. Finally, Izuna's reports appeared. Unlike everyone else, every report involved teamwork, command structures, leadership, formation changes, retreat orders, multi-team coordination. Ren laughed. He really thinks like a battlefield commander. The husky quietly looked at everyone. Every genius is attacking the system from their own specialty. Shun nodded. Exactly. Tobarama attacks logic. Orochimaru attacks biology. Nara attacks mathematics. Kabuto attacks medicine. Izuna attacks command structures. Daichi smiled. And because none of them think alike, they keep finding bugs the others never would. Akira enlarged another chart. The graph shocked everyone. Nearly 70% of newly discovered bugs were found by famous researchers. The remaining 30% were found by completely unknown civilians. The husky blinked. Unknown people, found almost 1/3. Kaien smiled. Talent doesn't have a monopoly on good ideas. Shun quietly added, sometimes, the person asking the strangest question isn't famous yet. Late that night, the 6 quietly watched the endless stream of incoming reports. The bug counter continued rising. But, instead of feeling discouraged, the 5 researchers smiled. Every bug report wasn't proof that the blockchain system was weak. It was proof that the entire ninja world had become part of the research. For the first time in history, research was no longer confined to one laboratory. The entire world had become one. Chapter 154, The Growth Bottleneck. A week later, the blockchain project was progressing smoothly. Most of the reports arriving now were duplicate bug reports. Daichi sat before the control panel, sorting through them one by one. Duplicate, already fixed, already reported. He lazily continued his work. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on one report. Not because of the bug, but because of the player's level. Player, Tobarama Senju. Level, 18. Daichi frowned. Quote. Level 18. He immediately opened another profile. Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Level, 28. Hamura Otsutsuki. Level, 28. Another. Madara Uchiha. Level, 23. Hashirama Senju. Level, 23. Daichi's expression gradually became serious. Quote. Something's wrong. He immediately called the others. Everyone, come here. A few moments later, the 5 gathered around the screen. Akira adjusted his glasses. What happened? Daichi pointed at the player profiles. Look at their levels. The room became silent. Kaien frowned. They're too low. Ren nodded. According to our calculations, Madara and Hashirama should already be around level 25. Hagoromo and Hamura should have reached level 30. Shun quietly folded his arms. We made a mistake. Akira immediately opened the global statistics. Millions of player records flashed across the screen. Hours passed. The 5 compared battle records. Dungeon completion rates, experience gains, daily activity, player behavior. Finally, Akira found the answer. I found it. A graph appeared. It showed player activity over the last months. At first, the number of dungeon clears rose rapidly. Then, it gradually stabilized. Finally, it became almost flat. Ren frowned. Quote. Saturated. Akira nodded. The competition inside the ninja world has reached saturation. Kyan continued the analysis. There are now enough elite players to efficiently clear almost every dungeon. There are very few new challenges. Shun pointed toward another graph. And look here. Another statistic appeared. Time spent in dungeons, 54%. Time spent researching bugs, 31%. Time spent socializing, 15%. Daichi laughed helplessly. They're having too much fun. Akira nodded. The bug bounty event changed player priorities. Instead of chasing higher levels, they're experimenting, researching, playing with strange ideas. Ren smiled. Which isn't a bad thing. Kyan shook his head. No, but their motivation to become stronger has decreased. Shun quietly added. The stronger a player becomes, the slower each level naturally grows. If they also lose the urge to compete, their growth slows even further. The room became silent. After several minutes, Daichi spoke. We need more elite players. Everyone nodded. The solution was obvious. The ninja world alone was no longer enough. Shun looked toward the husky. Can you send us to another world? The husky thought for a moment, then shook its head. No, I don't possess that ability. Daichi sighed. So, we're stuck. The husky suddenly raised one paw. However, I do know another way. The five immediately looked at it. The husky smiled. My friend, the shop system. It has authority over dimensional trade. It can arrange a stable portal. Ren's eyes narrowed. A portal. The husky nodded. Not teleportation. A permanent connection between two worlds. Akira immediately asked. Any world? The husky shook its head. No, there are restrictions. It can only connect worlds of approximately the same level. The ninja world cannot suddenly connect to an overwhelmingly stronger world, nor to one far weaker. The dimensional laws won't allow it. Kyan slowly smiled. So, we'll meet another civilization. Shun nodded thoughtfully. And another group of elite players. Daichi grinned. Our research is finally leaving the ninja world. The husky looked at the five. There is one more thing. Once the portal opens, the two worlds will no longer develop separately. They will influence one another. Trade, knowledge, technology, conflict, friendship, everything. Silence filled the room. The five exchanged glances. This wasn't merely recruiting more players. It was the first contact between two different worlds. Kyan slowly stood. Then, before opening the portal, we need a plan. Shun smiled faintly. Not just a plan, a protocol. Akira nodded. First contact. Ren grinned. This is going to be interesting. Daichi laughed. Ha ha ha. We spent years changing one world. He looked toward the glowing dimensional map. I wonder how long it'll take us to change two. Chapter 155, The First Contact Protocol. The husky stood before the dimensional control panel. Countless worlds floated like stars across the screen. It raised one paw. I'll begin scanning compatible worlds. Once I finish, you can choose which world to connect. Wait. Kyan's voice stopped it. The husky looked back. Kyan slowly stood up. We're making a mistake. Daichi frowned. What mistake? Kyan walked toward the dimensional map. We're thinking about which world to connect. When? We should first decide how every future connection will work. The room fell silent. Shun immediately understood. If we don't establish rules now, we'll end up making exceptions later. Akira nodded. And exceptions become precedents. Ren smiled. So, we create the constitution first. Then choose the world. The husky slowly lowered its paw. Quote. Makes sense. The six spent the entire day discussing, arguing, rejecting ideas, creating new ones. Every rule had only one requirement. It must apply to every world they ever connect. No exceptions. As evening approached, Kyan wrote the final version. Cross-dimensional connection protocol. Rule 1. The portal will remain completely secret. Its existence will never be announced. No ordinary player from either world will know it exists. Only the 5 researchers may freely use the portal. The husky may use it only for system administration. Daichi nodded. If everyone can cross worlds, chaos begins immediately. Rule 2. People from different worlds may never physically enter another world through the portal. The portal exists only for the administrators. No exceptions. Ren smiled. If worlds start invading each other, Our project ends. Everyone nodded. Rule 3. Different worlds may interact only through approved methods. Those methods are dungeon cooperation, online communication, future system events, nothing else. Shun added, meeting in a dungeon is much safer than appearing inside another world's capital. Rule 4. Every newly connected world receives its own independent infrastructure. Separate servers, separate world chat, separate ranking system, separate marketplace, separate dungeon network. Even if both worlds use the same dungeon system, neither side will know the other exists. Akira explained, we let the new civilization adapt naturally. If they suddenly discover another world, their society may collapse. Rule 5. Server merging happens only after complete integration. Only when the new world's daily life fully depends on phones, the network, dungeon leveling, the dungeon shop. Only then will both world servers merge. World chat becomes one, rankings merge, events merge. Only then will both civilizations officially discover one another. The Husky smiled. A gradual integration. Rule 6. All interdimensional trade must pass through a single application. Cross-dimensional market. No direct trading, no private exchanges. Everything passes through the market. Daichi became excited. So, it'll work like a virtual bank. Akira nodded. The buyer purchases an item. The payment is automatically transferred. Sky coins move from the buyer's account to the seller's account. Shun continued. The purchased item is delivered directly. A miniature teleportation array moves the product safely across dimensions. The Husky smiled. Automatic logistics. I like it. Then, Kyan wrote the final and most important rule. Everyone became serious. Rule 7. Foundational treasures are permanently prohibited from interdimensional trade. Anything considered part of a world's foundation can never leave that world. Examples. Tailed beasts. The Sage of Six Paths, treasures. Divine trees. Unique world cores. Irreplaceable bloodline origins. Or anything capable of permanently changing a world's balance. Ren slowly nodded. If someone seals the 9 tails inside a jar and sells it, the ninja world itself changes. Shun quietly added, we're connecting civilizations, not stripping them of their foundations. Akira wrote one final sentence beneath the rule. A world must never become weaker simply because it joined the network. Silence filled the room. The Husky carefully read every rule again. Then, for the first time, it stood up and bowed toward the 5. I've managed the dungeon network for countless years. I've connected thousands of civilizations, but none of them ever created rules before opening a portal. It smiled. Every problem I spent ages solving, you prevented before it even happened. Kyan closed the protocol book. Good. He looked toward the dimensional map. Now, and only now, we're ready to choose our first world. The 6 quietly turned toward the countless worlds floating before them. For the first time, they weren't searching for stronger players. They were searching for the first civilization that would become part of a network destined to span countless worlds. Chapter 156, the name that stopped the room. The next morning, the 6 gathered once again before the dimensional control panel. The Husky stood in front of the enormous screen. Thousands of compatible worlds had already been filtered. The list now contained only civilizations roughly equal in overall strength to the ninja world. The Husky cleared its throat. I'll begin reading the compatible worlds. World 017, the Kingdom of Mages. World 041, the Azure Continent. World 109, the Eternal Empire. World 203, the Dragon Frontier. The names continued. Some sounded ordinary, others completely unfamiliar. Shun quietly listened. As the names passed, his expression gradually became strange. He had heard some of them before. Not in this life, but in his previous one. They had been anime, manga, novels, games, the Spirit World, the Hunter World, the Crystal Continent, the Demon Realm. Others, he had never heard of. Which meant, not every world existed as fiction in his previous life. Some were completely unknown civilizations. Daichi noticed Shun's expression. You recognize some? Shun nodded. A few. In my previous world, they existed as fictional stories. The Husky smiled. That isn't surprising. Some worlds naturally develop methods of observing fragments of other realities. Dreams, inspiration, stories. Sometimes, they unknowingly witness another world's history. Akira adjusted his glasses. So, those authors may simply have recorded what they saw. The Husky shrugged. It happens occasionally. No one fully understands why. It continued reading. World 611, the Gourmet Age. World 739, the Soul Society. World 812, the Pirate Era. It paused briefly before reading the official designation. Commonly known as, One Piece. Stop. Shun's calm voice echoed through the room. The husky immediately stopped reading. Everyone turned toward him. Daichi blinked. You know this one. Shun slowly nodded. Did you just say? One Piece. The husky looked at the list. Yes. World designation. One Piece. Ren looked surprised. Is it famous? Shun took a deep breath. In my previous life, it was one of the most famous worlds. Akira became interested. What kind of civilization? Shun began explaining. A world almost entirely covered by oceans. Thousands of islands. Powerful pirates. A world government. Marines. Revolutionaries. He paused. And a unique power system. Kaien folded his arms. Different from chakra. Shun nodded. Completely. It has something called devil fruits. People gain extraordinary abilities, but lose the ability to swim. Ren laughed. That's a strange trade. Shun smiled faintly. There's another power system. Haki. It isn't tied to devil fruits. Anyone can theoretically learn it. The room became quiet. Daichi slowly looked toward Shun. Haki. Shun nodded. The black energy we bought from the shop. Armament Haki. Observation Haki. Conqueror's Haki. It originally comes from that world. Everyone froze. Even the husky looked surprised. So, the power system you're using originated there. Akira immediately became interested. That means, we can study its original users. Ren smiled. And maybe, improve our own understanding. Kaien remained thoughtful. What about their overall strength? Shun answered honestly. Very high. But, it's still within the same general level as the ninja world. The strongest individuals are monsters. But so are Hagoromo and Madara. The husky nodded. My compatibility calculations agree. Neither world overwhelmingly surpasses the other. Daichi suddenly grinned. So, our first neighboring world might actually be One Piece. Shun slowly shook his head. Not yet. Everyone looked toward him. We created the rules yesterday. Now, we follow them. He pointed toward the long list still displayed on the screen. We don't choose because it's familiar. We compare every candidate. We evaluate their strengths, their risks, their potential. Only then do we decide. Kaien smiled. Exactly. The protocol exists to stop personal bias. The husky quietly nodded. Understood. It continued scrolling through the endless list of compatible worlds. But everyone in the room noticed one thing. For the first time since the meeting began, the name One Piece remained highlighted on the screen. No one said another word. Yet all six understood. It had just become the leading candidate for humanity's first interdimensional connection. Chapter 157. The value of Haki. The room remained silent. The name One Piece was still highlighted on the dimensional screen. No one spoke for a while. Everyone was thinking. Daichi was the first to break the silence. So, the Haki we learned actually comes from this world. Shun nodded. Yes. Daichi scratched his head. That's surprising. I always thought Haki came from some higher level civilization. He looked at his fist. A layer of black armament Haki slowly covered it. It completely depends on the user. There doesn't seem to be any fixed upper limit. The stronger the user, the stronger Haki becomes. Ren nodded in agreement. And it's incredibly versatile. It doesn't replace your own fighting style. It strengthens it. Akira adjusted his glasses. Exactly. Haki doesn't force every person to fight the same way. It amplifies what you're already good at. Kaien smiled. A swordsman becomes a stronger swordsman. A seal master becomes a stronger seal master. A taijutsu expert becomes even deadlier. It fills in weaknesses, while making strengths even stronger. Shun nodded. That's why I chose it from the shop. It's one of the few universal power systems. Daichi became interested. Universal. Shun explained. Think about chakra. If someone has poor chakra control, they'll struggle their entire life. If they lack talent, many techniques become impossible. He pointed toward his Haki-covered hand. Haki is different. It doesn't care whether you're a ninja, a pirate, a samurai, or even an ordinary person. If you possess enough will, you can learn it. Akira added, that's probably why the shop classified it as a universal technique. It can exist inside almost any civilization. The husky nodded. The shop's classification says exactly that. Haki has one of the highest compatibility ratings among all known power systems. Ren smiled. It also solves many weaknesses. He raised his sword. A swordsman without long-range attacks can cut farther. A fragile researcher can protect himself. A seal master doesn't suddenly become weak in close combat. Kaien continued, it doesn't interfere with chakra. It doesn't interfere with sage mode. It doesn't interfere with bloodlines. It simply stacks on top of them. Daichi laughed. So we accidentally picked one of the best support systems available. Shun shook his head. Not accidentally. I remembered one thing from my previous life. Everyone looked at him. Haki never determined how far someone could go. The person determined that. He continued, two people may possess the same armament Haki. One barely hardens his fists. The other coats an entire battlefield. Two people may have observation Haki. One senses nearby enemies. The other predicts the future. Two people may awaken conquerors Haki. One knocks out weak opponents. The other splits the heavens. The room became quiet. Akira slowly smiled. So, Haki has an extremely high ceiling. But, the ceiling belongs to the user. Shun nodded. Exactly. It grows with the individual. Not with the technique. The husky looked at the report on the shop. Then smiled. I understand now why you five adapted to it so quickly. Daichi grinned. We've always believed techniques are only tools. Ren nodded. A weak person holding a legendary weapon is still weak. Kaien looked toward the highlighted world once more. If this world produced Haki, then I'm curious, what kind of people created such a simple, yet nearly limitless power system? Shun smiled faintly. So am I. In my previous life, I only watched their stories. This time, we'll study them. The husky quietly marked another note beside World 812. Research value, extremely high. Universal power system with exceptional compatibility. It then looked toward the 5 researchers. I have a feeling, this world won't just give us more elite players. It may also change the way we understand power itself. The 5 silently agreed, because for researchers, the greatest treasure in a new world was never its strongest fighter. It was the ideas that world had created. Chapter 157 Part 2, The Era of Legends. Everyone continued looking at the highlighted name. World 812, One Piece. Shun suddenly thought of something. He looked toward the husky. Can you tell me what point in the timeline that world is currently in? The husky nodded. One moment. Its paw moved across the dimensional panel. A moment later, several identical worlds appeared. The husky explained. There are 4 parallel timelines of the One Piece world within the compatible range. They've diverged because of different historical events. Shun wasn't surprised. Parallel worlds. That makes sense. The husky continued reading. Timeline 1312. Timeline 1426. Timeline 1485. Timeline 1528. Shun suddenly interrupted. Wait, did you just say 1485? The husky nodded. Yes. Timeline 1485. Shun smiled. Good. We're really lucky. The other 4 looked confused. Daichi asked, is that point in history important? Ren nodded. You reacted immediately. Shun shook his head. Not because it's historically important, but because it's the best possible era for us. Akira adjusted his glasses. Explain. Shun walked toward the world map. At this point, most of the legendary monsters are still alive. The others looked confused. Shun smiled faintly. By monsters, I mean the strongest people. There are powerful pirates. The Marines are at their peak. The strongest commanders are active. The next generation has already begun appearing. Ren immediately understood. So, instead of only old legends, we'll also have future legends. Shun nodded. Exactly. We won't be limited to one generation. We'll have both. Kaien folded his arms. So, the player quality will be extremely high. Shun smiled. Very high. The world's strongest fighters are concentrated in this era. Daichi laughed. Perfect. More elite players. More competition. Faster growth. Akira, however, asked another question. If we connect to that world, who distributes the phones? Silence filled the room. They all looked at each other. Ren smiled. We'll need a distributor. Kaien nodded. Someone capable. Someone with influence. Someone who can spread the phones across the entire sea. Shun thought quietly. Then suddenly laughed. There is one person who would have been perfect. Everyone became curious. Who? Morgans. Daichi blinked. The newspaper guy. Shun nodded. Yes. He controls the largest news network in that world. He understands information. He has connections almost everywhere. If anyone could distribute phones across countless islands, it would be him. Ren smiled. That sounds perfect. Shun sighed. There is only one problem. What? At this point in the timeline, he may not have started his newspaper empire yet. Akira nodded thoughtfully. If that's true, we'll need another candidate. Kaien smiled. No, if he hasn't started yet, that may be even better. The others looked toward him. We could become his first business partner. The room became quiet. Even the husky slowly nodded. Interesting. Instead of searching for an established distributor, you help create one. Daichi laughed. That actually sounds like us. Shun looked once more at the glowing dimensional map. Before opening the portal, We'll investigate the world. We need to know who can be trusted, who understands business, and who has the ability to connect an entire civilization. The Husky marked another note beside timeline 1485. Priority candidate. Excellent era for recruiting elite players. Potential large-scale distributor under evaluation. The pirate world had not yet joined the dungeon network. But before the first portal was ever opened, the 5 researchers were already planning how to connect an entire ocean of islands with nothing more than a single phone. Chapter 158, Choosing the First Partner. The following week, the 5 did not rush to open the portal. Instead, they followed their own protocol. Investigate first, act later. Using the secret observation function provided by the shop system, they quietly watched the pirate world. No one in that world knew they were being observed. For 7 days, the 5 studied its people, its kingdoms, its governments, its pirates, its merchants, its economy. The first person they investigated was Morgan's. Daichi smiled. So, let's see the future king of newspapers. Several hours later, everyone became silent. The reports were disappointing. Akira read the investigation. Occupation, independent writer. No major newspaper. No information network. No political influence. No large business. Ren scratched his head. So, he's still at the beginning. Shun nodded. We're too early. The Morgans I knew doesn't exist yet. Daichi sighed. What a pity. He would have been the perfect distributor. Kaien closed the report. No, he will become perfect. But, not today. The investigation continued. They observed shipping companies, independent traders, kingdom merchants, large commercial organizations, even pirates involved in trade. One by one, the candidates were rejected. Too greedy, connected to pirates, controlled by nobles, frequently breaks contracts, known for smuggling. Akira quietly crossed out another name. Rejected. After several more days, only one candidate remained. A merchant association, not the largest, not the richest, but the most respected. Akira opened the final report. This organization has existed for decades. Ren read another page. They trade with dozens of islands. Daichi continued. They've never been caught cheating customers. Shun looked at the investigation summary. Interesting. Kaien read aloud. Business reputation. ... Excellent. Contract fulfillment. ... Excellent. Customer trust. ... Excellent. Political neutrality. ... Excellent. Criminal connections. ... None discovered. The room became quiet. Daichi smiled. They're almost boring. Shun shook his head. No, they're exactly what we need. Akira nodded. The first distributor must value reputation more than profit. Ren added. If they begin abusing the dungeon system, the entire world's trust disappears. Kaien quietly looked at the report. They're honest. They honor contracts. They've survived for years without relying on pirates or corruption. He smiled. That tells me their leadership understands long-term business. The Husky looked at the report. So, this merchant association becomes your first partner. Kaien nodded. Most likely. Shun added. But, we're still not revealing ourselves. Daichi grinned. They'll think they've received a mysterious business opportunity. Akira smiled. And before signing anything, they'll pass our background investigation. Ren laughed. We investigated them. They'll investigate us. Kaien nodded approvingly. Good. That's exactly what honest merchants should do. The Husky quietly looked at the 5. I've connected thousands of worlds. Almost everyone chose the strongest organization, the richest kingdom, the largest empire. It looked at the Merchant Association's report. You chose the most trustworthy. Shun calmly answered. The richest partner can become poor. The strongest organization can collapse. The greatest empire can fall. He closed the report. But a reputation built over decades is far more valuable. Kaien stood before the dimensional control panel. He marked the Merchant Association as first contact candidate, then looked toward the others. The next step is making first contact. For the first time, 2 different worlds will begin doing business. The room fell silent. Everything had been prepared. The rules were written. The world had been chosen. The distributor had been selected. Now, only one step remained. To knock on the door of another world. Chapter 159, The First Business Proposal. The control room was unusually quiet. Everything had been decided. The world, the timeline, the rules, the distributor. Only one question remained. Who would make the first contact? Daichi immediately raised his hand. I'll go. Ren raised his hand as well. So will I. Akira shook his head. No, you two are the worst choices. Daichi looked offended. Why? Akira answered calmly. You enjoy creating chaos. We're trying to establish a long-term business partnership. Not scare them. Ren laughed. Quote. Fair point. Kaien looked toward Shun. What do you think? Shun thought for a moment. Nobody goes. Everyone looked confused. The husky tilted its head. But, how do you negotiate without meeting them? Shun smiled faintly. We're researchers. We solve problems. We don't create unnecessary risks. Akira immediately understood. A letter. Shun nodded. Exactly. Kaien smiled. Anonymous. No names. No faces. No origin. Daichi grinned. So, our first contact with another world is through business mail. The others laughed. Akira immediately began drafting the proposal. The first version contained 12 pages. Daichi looked at it. Quote. Nobody is reading all that. Akira sighed. Quote. You're right. 3 hours later, the proposal had been reduced to 2 pages. It contained only 4 points. First, a mysterious organization wished to establish a long-term business partnership. Second, the organization could provide a revolutionary communication device capable of instant long-distance communication. Third, the Merchant Association would become the exclusive distributor within its world. Fourth, if interested, simply place the signed contract inside the enclosed storage seal. No meeting was required. No identities would be exchanged. Ren read the proposal. Quote. Simple. Shun nodded. Trust isn't built through long speeches. It's built through fulfilled promises. The husky looked surprised. You aren't asking for money first. Kaien shook his head. No, we'll send several phones, free of charge, along with detailed instructions. Akira added. If they refuse, they simply return them. If they accept, the business begins. The husky smiled. You really trust them? Kaien corrected it. No, we trust our investigation. Late that night, the first dimensional delivery was prepared. Inside a reinforced storage seal were 10 prototype phones, instruction manuals, a business contract, several communication scrolls, and one handwritten note. To the Honorable Merchant Association, we represent an organization interested in long-term cooperation. Our identities are currently confidential. Judge us not by our names, but by the value of what we offer. Test the enclosed devices thoroughly. If they fail to meet your expectations, simply return them. If they exceed your expectations, we hope this will become the beginning of a partnership lasting many years. Daichi smiled. I like it. Ren nodded. No threats. No promises of power. Just business. Shun quietly sealed the package. The first impression should always be professional. The husky opened a tiny dimensional gateway. Unlike the large world portal, this one was only the size of a suitcase. Just enough for the package. The room became silent. Kaien looked at the others. Any objections? No one spoke. He gently pushed the package into the portal. The dimensional gateway closed immediately afterward. No explosions. No dramatic light. No earth-shaking event. Just a single package, crossing from one world into another. Daichi leaned back in his chair. Quote. After everything we've done, I didn't expect first contact between worlds to begin with a business proposal. Shun smiled faintly. The greatest revolutions don't always begin with war. Sometimes, they begin with a delivery. Far away, in the pirate world, a merchant association would soon discover a mysterious package that had appeared without explanation. And with it, the history of two worlds would quietly begin to intertwine. Chapter 160, The Impossible Package. Meanwhile, in the One Piece world, the headquarters of the Blue Sea Merchant Association was as busy as ever. Merchants came and went. Cargo was loaded onto ships. Contracts were signed. Arguments over prices echoed throughout the hall. It was an ordinary day. Suddenly, a small flash of light appeared in the chairman's office. Flash. A wooden box quietly appeared on the desk. No explosion. No smoke. No warning. It simply appeared. The chairman, Edward, immediately stood up. His hand instinctively reached for the sword hanging beside his chair. Quote. Who? No answer. The office was completely empty. He slowly approached the box. On top was a sealed envelope. Written in neat handwriting were only a few words. To the chairman of the Blue Sea Merchant Association. Edward frowned. Who delivered this? He immediately called outside. Guards. Within seconds, several guards rushed inside. Sir. Edward pointed toward the box. Did anyone enter? The guards looked confused. No. We've been guarding the entrance the entire time. No one entered. Edward's expression became serious. Quote. Impossible. He immediately ordered the room sealed. For the next 2 hours, the entire office was searched. Windows, walls, floor, ceiling, Hidden passages. Nothing. It was as if the package had fallen from the sky. Finally, Edward picked up the letter. He carefully read every line. When he finished, he remained silent for a long time. One elder asked, "Sir, is it a threat?" Edward slowly shook his head. "No, it's a business proposal." The room became quiet. "A business proposal?" Edward nodded. "From an organization that refuses to reveal its identity. They claim they possess a revolutionary communication device. They're offering us exclusive distribution rights." One merchant immediately laughed. "Another fraud." Another nodded. "They probably want money." Edward shook his head again. "They specifically state, we pay nothing. If we're not interested, we simply return the devices." Silence. An elderly merchant frowned. "So, they're risking everything, without asking for payment." Edward nodded. "Exactly." Another merchant became suspicious. "What if it's poisoned?" Edward calmly opened the wooden box. Inside, 10 strange black devices rested neatly in padded compartments. None of them resembled a denmushi. No living creatures. No snail. No wires. No batteries. Nothing they recognized. Beneath the phones lay an instruction manual. Edward carefully opened the first page. The title immediately caught everyone's attention. User Manual. One merchant looked puzzled. They even included instructions. Edward smiled faintly. Professional. Another elder noticed something else. The packaging is excellent. No wasted space. No unnecessary decorations. Everything is arranged perfectly. Edward nodded. Whoever prepared this shipment understands business. He continued reading. The manual explained everything. How to activate the device. How to register. How to communicate. How to charge it. Even common troubleshooting methods. Every question already had an answer. The office became completely silent. Finally, Edward closed the manual, then looked toward the elders. "What do you think?" One merchant spoke first. "I still don't trust them." Another nodded. "Neither do I." An elderly accountant slowly smiled. "But I trust the amount of work behind this package." Everyone looked toward him. He pointed at the instruction manual. The people behind this expected every possible question. He picked up the phone. They even designed the packaging for safe transportation. He held up the contract. The agreement contains fair terms. No hidden clauses. No unreasonable demands. He smiled. This wasn't written by swindlers. It was written by professionals. Edward slowly nodded. "I reached the same conclusion." He looked toward the 10 unopened phones. "We still don't know who they are." He picked up one of the devices. "But I'm beginning to believe they're exactly what they claim to be." He placed the phone back into the box, then gave his first order. "Follow the instructions. We test every device for 1 month. If even half of their claims are true." He looked out the office window toward the countless merchant ships in the harbor. The age of communication across the seas will change forever. Far away, inside the ninja world, the 5 researchers had no idea what decision would be made. All they could do now was wait, because for the first time, their success no longer depended on research. It depended on whether strangers in another world chose to trust them.